What's up, Last Things live stream? Here we are. Got the boys from Terminus Extreme Metal Podcast. Very excited about this. We got the death metal guy and the black metal guy showing their faces, which is already
bearing it all.
We've already left cult. We've already left cult way behind because we've got faces. We're not doing names, but we got faces now. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us, dude.
Yeah,
it's always good when someone outside of our immediate circle of mentally ill people discovers us. So.
Yeah. Yeah, my crowd's more neurodivergent, which is the same thing as mentally ill, but more woke. Anyway, we got nice. You got some folks in the chat that. And you look at the side, right? You can see the comments. You got.
Can we see? I don't know if we can. I can't see. Yep. I can't. Oh wait, I was on private chat.
Yeah,
all right.
Click on
comments. Comments. There we are.
Oh, cool. Sup, Rudy? Hey, S killed. I know him too. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
All the guys saying Gorgoroth are definitely.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, okay.
So anyway, if for those of you who don't know, Terminus Extreme Metal Podcast is I would say doing something that no other podcast I've heard is doing, and they're talking about extreme metal in ways that I would like to hear people talk about music in general online, But yeah, I was put on to Terminus recently by someone in the Discord, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So yeah, guys, what's up with waging war on metal music journalism? Can I just dive into that, because that's the subtitle or the blurb on the YouTube channel is waging war on metal journalism.
I think the black metal guy came up with that tagline, so I'll let him spearhead it.
Well, I mean, that's one of those like taglines. Like, it's so hard to come up with a fucking catchy tagline, and you try like 20 of them before one sticks, right? But that one's got a nice rhythm to it. Relentless total war on metal journalism.
Oh yeah, relentless total war. That scans.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like, basically, the death metal guy and I have been doing sort of metal criticism stuff in one form or another for a pretty long time. Like, together, easily, God, we've been, like, collaborating on this shit for almost 15 years.
Yeah, like about half our lives
on and off.
Now, we've been doing shit together.
Nice.
On and off, like beautiful. You disperse, you have a new configuration, maybe with some different people, and we've been doing this for about, exactly 5 now, which is fun.
We just hit the 5-year anniversary like this month, I think.
Sick. Yeah. That's the Last Things 5-year anniversary in nice. January. Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Real COVID podcast. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, us too. Yeah. We were like, we were like, we'd been talking about, we had done like, there's like a secret Terminus episode that we tried to record the year before. And then when COVID hit, it was basically like, okay, if we don't know it, do it now. We're just fucking fools.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so the name is basically, we've been involved in this for a while, and right around the time when, say, 2012 through 14, when journalism started to form a kind of lockstep, decentralized consensus on all sorts of things. That was, if we look really, it's been going on for a very long time in journalism if we go far back, but people started to pick up on it. And I think because it became heavy-handed, and we really noticed that in metal journalism, like we were, I think I became more skeptical of how I like read the New York Times or whatever because of the shit I was seeing with like how Kim Kelly and all those people did business. So I think, you started to get a sense that there was this sort of incestuous feedback loop between PR people and journalists, where the PR people essentially wrote the reviews. And yes. the journalists, especially, and so often the journalists were also PR people, which it's hard to blame people for on an individual level because, okay, you're like hustling or whatever. But it does create problems, right? And, the fall of the sort of authority of the print mag means that suddenly there was all these bloggers and shit and people on Twitter who wanted to get paid in social capital. Does that make sense?
That's the only
right?
way you can get paid, is
exactly. And
so,
I mean, obviously, we want to get paid in social capital too. We do this so that 12 people think we're cool. But like, it's,
but there's a difference. There's a difference between social capital and respect. And it is important to, because I do this shit for respect, man. Being taken seriously by people who I take seriously, that's like why I'm even just like not just with my fucking head dangling off the
and really
okay, fair enough. I'm glad you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, sort of expanding upon it, I think in another way to look at it, what we saw was the sort of entryism of metal or extreme metal into big culture, which is something the black metal guy talks about a lot, which, has its initial start in Pitchfork covering black metal releases in the late 2000s to early 2010s.
That was, with Leviathan was in there, Burzum is Leviathan, Burzum,
Brandon Stazoy,
and then Brandon is my boy. You can talk shit, but he is my boy.
Shit, we may as well. But honestly, what I'll say is where it's gone since then makes me miss the days of Brandon Stazoy. And
well, because he interviewed, Portal being in Vice, and then of course Death Heaven. I mean, it's just demoralizing, man.
Well, so
it's too obvious. It's too obvious. Yeah.
Largely what happened is the metal scene, actually, it took longer, the metal scene, than most styles of music, but it eventually fell prey to the same kinds of pop music, industry standards, including underground. Underground music is largely pop music also.
The term we use on the show is, I guess, our method of poisoning the well discursively, as we just call it alt music inc, alt culture inc,
right?
Right, which is this sort of weird nexus of punk and establishment culture that you can follow going back to like even the days of maximum rock and roll or something.
I mean, it is weird to have a thing where it used to be back in the day, though, there would be like selling out, which would mean that, if you were a punk band or indie band, or I suppose a metal band, you get signed to a major label, making, perhaps there's some aesthetic compromise or social compromise, but at least you're getting paid. At least there's a possibility of getting.
Now you don't even get fucking paid for it.
Now it's like you were saying, like black metal guy, but just like, like social capital and stuff, like, of course, we're all trying to build respect, but as far as like, social people doing stuff for social capital in this microscopic way, it's like, what are you even going to trade that capital for, man? It's like, it's just, why not be real if you're on this micro level? It's just like.
Also, sorry, I interrupted the death metal guy. You were going somewhere with that.
I was just going to say that, largely what we were doing is, I think sort of bringing it to our process that we take now is, in a sense, we're trying to do an updated version of, at least for me, the sort of internet metal culture that we grew up on in like the mid to late 2000s, where gatekeeping is cool and good.
Yes.
There is such a thing as bad music, and you should ridicule it when it comes up.
Dude, wisdom of the few.
Yeah. But more importantly, highlight good music and actually treat it seriously. Not in the sense of, just being a dilettante who happens to like some black metal records or something, but appreciating it from within. Because if there's something that
I think that's the main.
If there's something that I dislike, it's the fact that the cultural curators of any kind of underground art, be it metal or weird kinds of literature or something, always tend to be people coming from outside of it who are sort of part of the journalistic apparatus, rather than guys who are from within it who happen to write pretty well or talk about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I
think to us it's pretty important to be obviously there are all sorts of, you can meet a lot of people from outside metal subculture who are very knowledgeable about metal and very sincere in their interest, and maybe even accept metal for what it is on its own terms.
Well, this is who you're talking to. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So there we go. So exactly. There's a lot of guys like you that you run into at shows and stuff who have a external but non-patronizing and serious view about metal. But a lot of the people writing the metal criticism,
Yeah,
right? It's always external, and it's always confused and hand-wringy.
Yeah. Well, it definitely. I liked. I definitely invited by asking you about waging war on music metal journalism. I invited some like casting aspersions and hating because I wanted to, but it's something that I like about your show, except at least insofar as I've checked it out lately, is that you're actually not in the show talking shit about stuff you don't like. For the most part, you're critical about stuff, but it's not like a hater show. It's a very positive, you're talking about the positive substance of the music. And I like the extent to which you guys just talk about fucking sound. You're talking about the actual aesthetics of the music, but like literally just melody, rhythm, harmony, the guitar tones. And in a way that it's hard to talk about that stuff in ways that aren't like trade show nerd academic conservatory type shit. So to be able to talk about stuff in that nerded out way, but also be talking about the emotional aspect and the poetics and the aesthetics, to ride that line is something that I appreciate a lot. And I try to do that.
Thanks, man.
That's high praise.
That's something really important to us.
Yeah. It's people, because especially with black metal, man, it's like, the lore around it is interesting, but it's just for people outside metal, it overshadows.
It takes up a lot I in the room.
It's a good way of burning 2 paragraphs without saying anything.
It's like, if I talk, if I mention black metal to someone who doesn't really know about it, it's like the first thing they're thinking of is like these like crimes and shit, rather than just what the difference between, what are the aesthetic effects of like a tremolo picking. Do we consider this to be a fast tempo or a slow tempo? Like, like real, like actual, how this stuff affects you, like physically.
Well, I think that like, insofar as like the music discussion goes, you and I talked a little bit before we jumped on, but like a couple things. One, it's pretty easy just through osmosis, playing an instrument yourself, talking to knowledgeable people to pick up on the majority of important kind of technical concepts. Without needing an excess of training or education. And 2, I think that it's important to talk about this stuff because within this style of music, let's just talk about metal more broadly. If we're pegging the beginning to the beginning of Black Sabbath, we have over half a century of iteration in musical technology that's been developed. Or if we're talking about black metal riffs, we're looking at about 40 years of that being developed at this point.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So this shit is not happening at random, and we're not merely adhering to sort of backing chord progressions that are vamped over like you would in other kinds of music. The metal riff is this crucial piece of technology that's actually like pretty unique to the style.
Yes.
So emphasizing its importance and talking about the actual musical characteristics of these kind of melodic figures, we think is like, crucial. I think you almost can't talk about the music without really getting into that.
No, a riff is like a fucking poem that the whole thing is based on. It's like a fucking like haiku that has like the world inside of it, I definitely appreciated the first thing that the guy sent me who told me to check you out was actually the I don't know what episode it was from because it was just a clip, but you were talking about the overlap of classical music, influence of classical music on metal and the sort of parallels and stuff. So that was interesting to hear you kind of have like a broader, bringing these other styles and stuff. But yeah, as far as like riffs, there's one of the things you were saying, the classical music thing is just like the extent to the harmonic adventurousness, particularly harmonic, but also rhythmic adventurousness of metal. You were saying that is where a lot of the sort of so-called high art these strands of what used to be called high art, European music, they've been sort of sublimated into extreme metal in certain ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think I guess part of that is a matter of just like one way of getting at that is like I think there's a reason that there's a certain kind of like smart, serious guy who is really interested in metal these days, right?
Yeah.
And that there was the militant core of that was the people actually making metal for years, but like over the time that the interest in this music has really expanded, and it's become through the internet more accessible to people. So for instance, say the fact that someone like yourself takes metal really seriously is a testament to the fact that there's a cultural gravity well there. Something is happening. There's like it's an energy that's gathering people around it. And even within our lifetimes, we can all remember a time when a lot of people would have spoken much more dismissively about metal. So there's something there. And I think it's and I think it's I think that's a testament to the fact that maybe we're attracted to this music that might seem like a weird sort of cultural tangent or backwater, because that's actually really where the artistic force is right now, or one of the places. Obviously, there's multiple places, but if you're I think there's a way. I mean, I could sort of like we could try to like summarize the argument from that clip or whatever, but basically I think our view is that as the most interesting and compelling features of classical music get driven out of the academy, basically by Schoenberg and Adorno and whatnot, and by the sort of teleological model of modern art. Modern art has a teleological understanding of itself that pushes towards not being art, pushes towards concept, right? It's like the Arthur Danto stuff. You think you're completing art, but what you're actually doing is it just sort of peters out triumphantly. Right. You end up with like a piece of shit on the wall in the gallery and then like a 15-page essay next to it.
Okay. I mean, I definitely know what you mean. I mean, these are heavy enough claims that I can't just be like, that's a fact, what you said.
Sure.
But I know what you mean for sure.
I'm putting it out there because I think you know what I'm talking about. So there's this way that, there's all kinds of modernism we're interested in artistically, but there's this sort of this institutional conservatory or art museum of modern art modernism kind of has this teleological quality to it that ends in this really abstruse kind of heady.
Well, it's like art. It's like art as critique or something.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it becomes art and critique of art.
Endless reflection on itself.
It just becomes reflexive. It becomes meta to a poisonous degree. Yeah. And it really loses the sort of working with your hands artisanal quality.
Yes.
Of art. And this sort of relates to this concept that we have on the show where we talk about like, okay, so if every broad genre of music has a thing that defines it, a sort of conceptual underpinning. One of the big arguments we make about metal is that it's very specifically about a collision of high and low art.
Yes.
So we've got some measure.
That's right. Go.
We've got some measure of dislike for certain kinds of hyper conceptual, heady, sort of meta brain poison modern art.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that modern art is the source of the problem there. It's not, it's not return with a V. That's not, necessarily the answer.
That shit is funny though. I love Return with a V.
Yeah. No, I like Return with a V too. I mean, he's got a Spike Extreme shirt on.
I unironically spell things with V's all the time, but you can't return to. The thing returns in a new form. And I think that's like basically like So yeah, collision of high and low culture, and there's all kinds of modernist art that were really cool, like for me, I like poets like Eliot, Ezra Pound, Yeats, people like that, who are engaging with all the same questions and many of the same answers as people in extreme metal or certainly neofolk. And there is there's an immediacy and vigor to it that's quite different from the notion of like a kind of decadent modern art that we'd like to beat up on, right?
Okay, yeah.
So there's good modernism and bad modernism, and I think metal has a lot in common with the good modernism. In music, an example of this would be Stravinsky. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, I don't know if this is like the exact parallel of what you're saying, but related is just that metal, and I've talked about this in other videos I've made, that technique, and not technique in a wanking like Dream Theater sense, but craft, even if it's not speed and dexterity, but just craft and labor is a big part of metal culture, and I mean, not necessarily in a political way, but there is a working class, or whatever, it's like not, it's not like there's, people can associate in classical music, you might associate technique and chops with like, highness or fucking conservatory, but technique and labor and stuff is also like an electrician knowing how to do stuff, and I feel like metal has that kind of, I feel like a lot of punk or indie stuff or music that's like more suspicious of chops almost looks down on chops as though it's like this plebeian thing or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
well, you're kind of getting at a concept that another concept we like to talk about on the show, where it's it's sort of a false distinction, but I think it's useful to explain things, which is the idea of sort of art music versus craftsman's music, and what would be a good example of this? So there are certain kinds of death metal bands that create music that is not auspiciously artful and is in many cases like extremely derivative in a deliberate sense. However, by mastering those tools and mastering those techniques, you can achieve heights like more conceptual high art music. If you this is not a great example, but I think people will kind of get what I'm getting at. If you look at a band like Bolt Thrower, now Bolt Thrower are actually just high art geniuses. However, the stuff that Bolt Thrower's music is made of is not particularly technical.
No.
Unique only to a point. It's more of a fascinating and brilliant rearrangement of already existing ideas. But I don't think anyone would disagree that they're like one of the greatest metal bands of all time. And they do manage to access sort of high conceptual art through just sheer will and mastery of these techniques that they're employing.
Yeah. No. True. Yeah. Although, I love Bolt Thrower. I was kind of surprised.
Oh, yeah. I've got the Bolt Thrower tattoo, man.
I was surprised, though. I don't know why I was surprised, but for some reason I was surprised to hear you say, like, because I saw that episode or listened to part of it where you said that they're like the greatest. Yeah, that you're like, they're on like the short list of greatest metal bands of all time. Like,
oh, yeah.
That's interesting to me. Yeah. Because no, go ahead.
Go.
Oh, well, I was just going to say there's so many, you guys are into a lot of stuff that, I don't even know if people use cult as an adjective anymore, but
they should.
Yeah,
it's
they
cool.
should. Yeah, no, good. Okay. Yeah. Cause just 10 years ago I was saying this, but yeah, like, I don't know if it's over, but yeah, cult. You guys are into a lot of shit that's really cult, and you review shit that's like very clearly like cult black metal or death metal, but it's like a lot of people that I at least used to know who are into super cult stuff were not, they would be like, they wouldn't even give it up to like, I don't know, like Converge or like, there's certain bands that I was like, oh, that's cool that these guys like them also. Or like even Bolt Thrower, like, I don't know. People who are just straight Blazebirth Hall fanatics or you know what I'm saying? Or just like straight, just.
Yeah. We've always like, there is a kind of inverse snobbery in, or like a kind of, you can get so deliberately siloed in really niche underground metal that it becomes hard to appreciate stuff that's just good.
Yes.
And I think like there are, we've always been more interested in kind of a mid-level that stitches together, like, you know, we have one ear to like literal mainstream metal, right? Or like things like that, or like relatively polished big releases that come out over a year. Like I reviewed Winterfilleth last year.
These bands I don't even know like that.
Exactly.
I am like so you know.
Okay, so when we say mainstream, maybe we mean something that's relatively obscure, but like
I'm just
bands that are swinging for a bigger venue, bigger niche, more polished. We have one ear towards that and one ear towards stuff that is very maybe lo-fi or niche or like deliberately restricted in its aims. But a lot of the stuff we like is somewhere in between. And, you know, I've known guys who are very serious black metal musicians who would just like say, they might like literally tell you that, I don't know, everyone likes Bolt Thrower, but what's another good example? They might just like...
Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, they might. I was thinking that. They might literally just say Cannibal Corpse is not a good band. And I think
wrong. They fucking rule.
Right.
I never could really latch on to Cannibal, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
It's well, basically, we also have a sort of respect for canonicity. There's like most of the, you can make an argument why a classic record actually sucks. But for the most part, there is this sort of accumulating tradition of metal records that have demonstrated their importance by the energy they've transmitted to other bands, right? By the new structures they've developed and the possibility space they opened, right? The bands that are originary, that have a relation to the origin and are origins in themselves. And so like Cannibal Corpse, you have to, you don't have to like Cannibal Corpse, right? But you have to take it seriously.
Yeah. Well, this is a very insider. I mean, this is when you're really inside of a tradition and a scene. Yeah, you take seriously the architecture of the whole history of it.
A better example for us and for the kind of people who listen to us would probably be Amon Amarth, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot like Amon Amarth. There's a lot of cult black metal guys who might, or cult death metal guys who might, you know, spit on Amon Amarth. They might even know that the early stuff is different, but they don't care. But Amon Amarth is tapping into a lot of the things that make death metal and really black metal great. And I think that, like, you know, an important part of subculture that makes it different from a more generalist interest in the arts is that it can be narrow-minded and autistic in a productive way, right? Yeah. So some of the guys I know who would just be like, I fucking hate Amon Amarth, right? Like, you know, or you'd ask them about, you know, oh, do you like, from the Blazebirth Hall, do you like the Nitberg record? Oh, nah, come on. That's, you know, that has like clearly defined aggressive riffing, right? We're not interested in that. But that's
defined aggressive. I do actually know what you mean. At least compared to Forest, right? Forest,
right?
Is very much
Exactly.
Not that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basic. Yeah. Nitberg works too much like an actual metal band, so we can't have that. Basically, I've known guys who say things like that, and they're geniuses. Right. And they've done some of the most, they've done extremely productive work in their niches. I mean, I'm thinking in particular of like, Simone from Sanguine Eagle, at Lamb from the House of First Light. He and his friends have like a sort of deliberately narrow-minded approach to a lot of this stuff where I would argue with them about it, you know, but like it's productive for them because, you know, Simone who's influenced by the uncompromising intensity of someone like Kaldrad, right? Where it's just like, this is the path. I will not deviate from the path. And it might mean that you forget to stop and smell the Amon Amarths, or, you know, or that, you know, you're not really interested in whatever new cool storming war metal record just came out. But like but there's an ascesis to deliberately pursuing a niche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a sort of minor addendum to that, to like clarify anyone coming from outside that might be confused about it. It might not even bear saying, but I think it's like important to note that it's like we're doing the show and we are metalheads. Like most of what we listen to is metal. We've played in metal bands. We've been to countless metal shows. Like we are culturally very much a part of this thing.
I get the amulets out for the lads.
Yeah,
Man.
it's like
Dude,
we have sort of broad artistic interests, but this absolutely is a home to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that perspective informs a lot of what we talk about.
I started out as more of like a punk guy culturally, but pretty quickly gravitated
Say that out loud. You're ruining our fucking cred.
Well,
punk into black metal is legit. I mean,
it's a part of the show is that we joke about this all the time. But like, I mean, by this point, like even for years where I was like mostly listening to black metal and was more immersed in the culture and the ethos of it, like I would still have a lot of punk biases about music or whatever. Yeah. But by this point, a lot of that has worn off. And for most of my life, for most of our lives, he was the long hair one and I was the short hair one. And right now I have longer hair than I've ever had. That's the kinky role reversal at the heart of Terminus.
That's actually, it's funny because I always think it's like, we need to create a glossary for the show at one point of these weird sort of terms and mental models we've come up with. And I think actually that's kind of a cool one talking on this show is the short hair, long hair dichotomy and how both are crucial for extreme metal.
Extreme music proper. This gets back to what you were saying about like high-low culture and whatever. Extreme music proper is different from metal, which is a much broader thing. Or extreme metal proper is a narrower category than metal, and extreme metal depends on influence from other kinds of what we'd say extreme music.
Yes,
Discharge, Stooges,
100%. And just noise, straight up noise. And I mean, I would say, I think not just classical quote unquote music, but the post-war kind of, I mean, stuff, Stockhausen and Xenakis. And
I was actually wondering. So one thing that I'd be actually it's cool since you actually have more of a conservatory education, right?
I mean, technically I went to liberal arts college, but I mean,
you majored in music.
I've studied like counterpoint shit like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So it's cool that our ideas about some of this stuff just made sense to you. And more than that, like a thing I wanted to pitch to you is part of this story, I think has to be maybe sort of like the sort of there's sort of like a passage into the wilderness from like all the cool stuff diffuses from art music into the underground, into the sort of experimental rock music underground in the 60s. And I would say like John Cale has to be one of the major people for that because he studied with John Cage and he was interested in the drone aspect of medieval music and conceptual minimalism, and then suddenly you get a band like the Velvets who just are not really a rock band.
Totally. By the way, medieval music is even more than classical music, like huge for me. Late medieval and early Renaissance music, super.
I can hear that in your stuff.
But the thing is, though, as far as like how people get into metal or extreme metal, I mean, there's a thing. I mean, being someone who metal is such a huge part of my, sort of DNA, and yet I'm, not in the culture, very, very much not like in insider the way we're talking about it. But me and a lot of people that I know, it's not that we got into other forms of extreme or avant-garde music or whatever, and then through that discovered extreme metal. A lot of the time it's the other way around, actually. I mean, with that, for me, I mean, my first show was Slayer and Megadeth, like Clash of the Titans, I mean, and I was like, through like from Slayer and then to Morbid Angel, it was from that Earache Records. Then it goes from the Earache 94, shit around 94. It goes from that to Zorn. And then from John Zorn, then you're looking at all this other stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think there's a lot of, I think that's a trajectory too, where
so you made that journey in high school and it shaped where you went after
or middle school. Yeah. I mean, to be into like, to get into avant-garde stuff through metal, not the other way
that
around.
makes sense.
You know, so that's where it's this sort of thing where, you know, so then I sort of like have always been parallel keeping up with what's going on in extreme metal, but just, you know, as this thing, that's like the original thing that got me into just challenging shit. I mean, just hearing something. I mean, there's a personality type, man, of just, you're like, what's the next, even when you're a little kid, you're like, what's the dirtiest swear word? What's the, you know, what's the grossest pornography? What's the, and then drugs, you know, unfortunately, you know,
Hey,
it's like
he's talking about me right now.
Yeah. It's just like,
I've never done any drugs.
It's just, I mean, yeah. I mean, even,
It's part of my austere trad lifestyle.
Well, I think,
yeah.
I think what you're identifying is like, I think you're talking about a route that definitely exists, but I think that there's several different threads and different personality types that gets followed. And the one that you're describing, I definitely identify with. Like, my thing is the extreme thing. You know, in high school, I was always looking for, you know, I was listening to this like brutal, like noise gore grind when I was like 14. And that got me into power electronics and stuff like that from there. And I'm still always on the hunt for like the next worst thing. Yeah. And then I think that there's people that get into the weirdness and the sort of alien quality of it, you know, especially if you start looking at like fringier stuff in black metal, and they can sort of get funneled toward, you know, avant-garde and experimental music. And then there's guys that get really into the sort of technical flair of it, and they end up moving in like a jazz or a modern classical direction. So I think it's interesting, the idea of extreme metal as this sort of feeder idea that sort of extends into different parts of broader underground culture. And I think it's also interesting to ask, like, what keeps someone culturally here rather than sort of like moving fully over to one of those places.
That is a good yeah. I mean, some of this stuff might have to do with becoming a musician, and you just get, I mean, distracted isn't the right word, because there's no one thing that's supposed to be the thing that you do. But like, you know, if I was just getting really into like learning Slayer riffs and learning the Megadeth shit, and then getting like, oh, but what about jazz? And then you kind of just through playing stuff, sometimes people zigzag all over the place. Just from that, you know what I mean? It's like losing focus, but in a cool way. But you know, like,
I played jazz saxophone in middle school and the beginning of high school. I was in, you know, because you're like, what I don't know, like, what instrument do you want to play as a kid? And it's like, I don't know, maybe the saxophone. That's cool. Bill Clinton plays the saxophone. And
anything to promote neoliberalism, you know,
exactly,
it means jazz.
That remains our foremost priority. Now that they've cut our U.S. aid funds, we have to shill twice as hard. Anyway, But yeah, so I actually had some sort of like jazz. I was one of those kids that was, you know, my parents like basically tried to keep me from listening to a lot of popular music, which in retrospect I actually value. But it did make me very weird. And so, you know, I like would listen to like classical music and folk music and the Beatles and jazz with my parents. And then, you know, did this jazz stuff in relatively early, but at the same time, you know, you hear the guy in Linkin Park screaming and doing swears, and you know, it's actually Linkin Park never did swears. You hear the guy. Rage Against the Machine was the thing that really blew my mind.
Did it really?
And then, that was the first. Yes, I still love it. That was the first really heavy thing I ever heard, and it was like cussing, man, and
right.
Battle of Los Angeles. I have a whole story about that, but it basically that shit blew my mind. But then at the same time, I was trying to do this sort of, you know, jazz stuff, and increasingly my jazz buddies would talk about they were like aspiring serious musicians, some of them still are, right? And they would just be like, oh man, that's so simple, that's so dumb. And I realized, like, how do they make the guitar go over and over again?
There's also there's different kinds of complexity, you know. That's the thing. I mean, something that's so deep to me also, like I mean, something that remains with me from metal, though, is like there's that initial thing of being into what's the most brutal thing, what's the next most brutal thing, but then also having that musician-y kind of quality of craft, like somehow having it be both, which is, I mean, that's one of the reasons why stuff like, I mean, no disrespect to these genres really, but like power electronics once it gets onto that level, or once it gets onto like just like noise chord, it loses me a little, because to me the brutality does come from like breakdowns, riffs, tempo shifts, or whatever, you know. And I mean, something I love about a lot of black metal is stuff where it's like it's musician-y, but not like in a sense of hard to play, but just in the sense of like thoughtful
craft,
like crafted, like harmonic shit. I mean, Leviathan is probably the most important like black metal to me, period, you know. And it's just these like just the harmonic care, you know, and the emotion coming from chordal stuff, whether it's trained or not, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that just means, you know, there's different places where people get off the train, or there's different orderings of priority. You know, so for me, once you get into the dimension of like straight harsh noise or power electronic stuff, that is, you know, I'll call it music as a term of art, but ultimately, what is it? It's a kind of like modern performance art pastiche kind of thing.
That's,
you know,
it's like
like I'm a huge White House fan. You know, I've got like 2 White House tattoos. That's just what a fucking stupid idea that is. But you know, White House obviously is very cool sonically to me, but part of it is the art, and part of it is the lyrics and the overall sense of like horrible transgression, you know, this sort of like sneering contempt for reality itself. So it's like that might be effective up to a point for certain people, but it's more the totality of things for me. Yeah. And I think
and the really good ones, there still is technique to it, right? Like, you know, you could get into the sampling and the timing and whatever, but yeah, I mean, there is like a level of that sort of thing. Like maybe Death Metal Guy, you'd agree, like harsh noise wall or whatever. There's like diminishing returns. And
I can't get into wall. I cannot get into
that sort of stuff. Well, because at a point that kind of stuff becomes so like aesthetically diffuse. You know, power electronics is definitely slipping toward the highly conceptual, this is about a message or an idea kind of thing. I do like listening to my favorite records in that style a whole lot, and I love seeing it live. I think that it's a genre of music that really lives in the live environment.
Yeah.
But once you get to like straight harsh noise stuff, I really respect guys that can just listen to tapes of that. But at a certain point, it's so minimal. There's so little being communicated, at least to me, that I don't get a ton out of it.
Yeah. Some of it's a live music thing. Like I've been to a number of noise shows, and what's really fun is you just stand in front of the loudspeakers for a bit, you nod, maybe the guy on stage is doing something some sort of really crazy stunt. You look at it, you laugh, you finish your, you finish your 40, you go outside, you drink another 40, you come back in 2 bands later, who cares?
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
No noise. It's like bro shit, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, going out with the guys, you know, but
that's the secret of noise. I think is that it is like, noise is more like hardcore.
Yeah.
People really think.
Yes. Hardcore is very focused on live on the show. The show is the center of it.
I'll say a thing with, you know, something with like power electronics and noise like that. This is not something that I don't like about it, but it's actually something that's cool about it. But it's something that I was thinking makes it a lot different from extreme metal, just as far as the type of brutality. Like you're talking about like White House and shit, like it's actually pretty human compared to metal in the sense that even though it's talking about human cruelty, there's like there's like narrative, there's like human concerns.
There's a dude talking
talking to you. There's subjectivity. The human subject is at issue, you know, even if it's the annihilation thereof or whatever. But like, you know, metal, I mean, I think in one of these things, I think it was Black Metal Guy, you said, or maybe Death Metal Guy, you said this about Black Metal Guy. You said like, you've said that you want like as little humanity in metal as possible. Yes. And I'm interested in a sec for you to expound on what is meant by that, because to me, one of the things that's so beautiful about extreme metal is that emptying, just the fact that the concerns are macroscopic and like cosmic and mythic, And it's like, it's not about the great indoors, you know, it's the outside. I mean, that's the Lovecraftian element, is outside. And, you know, this sort of, my own stuff is so inside. I mean, it's absolutely introspective human shit, you know, it's a whole other thing. But one of the, you know, that's, you know, there's that power too. But the thing I love about metal is that outside the human, you know. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear, you know.
Oh yeah, you want me to talk about that now?
Yeah, please. You know, or both of you, either of you.
I mean, I like the term "the outside" too. That's actually something a term I use sometimes as well. So I guess what I mean, the inhuman. There's like, yeah. I mean, I am talking about like nature and whatever's beyond nature, if you want to think about it that way. Nature and the fundamental forces animating it, right? And the sort of the structures that recur, and the patterns, the eternal patterns that reassert themselves cyclically through the, you know, in the looping of time, right? The way it's nature is, you know, to me, the inhuman is nature, which is the gods. I'm a pagan, and so it is what is beyond the subjective, beyond the rational, and specifically in extreme metal. I mean, there really is an ideological dimension to this, where the human is very much a loaded concept.
I was just gonna, yes, please, yes.
It's the human of modernity. It's the human as this vacuous universal, this dance of the universal in particular. Yes, the dialectic.
It's the Enlightenment. Yeah. And
Hegel and Marx and their successors understand it from the inside best, but metal is a rejection of those categories. Extreme metal rejects those categories entirely. The world isn't thought, reason, or self-creating consciousness. The world is force, and it's and you know, that doesn't have to. That can also be a flower bloom, and not just like a fist in the face. But it's both, and so the inhuman is that world of forces, and in metal, obviously, we tend to focus on, you know, the most titanic and violent, but you know, neo-folk explores them at another spectrum, and you know, another end of the spectrum, and that's really what I mean by the inhuman, and with that aesthetically goes an elimination of subjectivity. And you see that we did a stream about lyrics the other day. Metal lyrics are notably like for the most part, there's not a self-expressive I.
Yeah. You don't get that, the personal pronoun. Yeah.
When there's an I, it's usually a heroic mask. And when that works best is when there's a kind of dramatic thing where, like, Rob Darkin's lyrics are this kind of visionary. Rob Darkin is any guy on the battlefield in 9th century Poland, right? There's when it doesn't work is when it becomes like, you know, my super badass OC, like nerd term, right? Original character, right?
Oh,
like,
okay.
What you don't want is all your lyrics to be about how, like, you like
fan fiction.
I'm the biggest Viking and everyone loves me, right?
That I've never even encountered in extreme.
No,
I don't even.
You get shades of it, basically. You get shades of it, and you don't want it to become like an ego trip. You want it to be kind of an elimination of ego.
Yeah. Well, this is and I mean, when you said ideological, it's funny, man, because it's like I like to avoid over determining political shit and fixating on stuff, because like I was saying, I love how you guys talk about music. I love how you avoid talking about object oriented politics on the show. But when you said ideological, there is, I have become borderline obsessed with the idea of the human as such, you know, like as this Enlightenment value, and the ideological trappings of that come with that, you know, and that metal. There's so much metal that it's not political, but if you're going to round it to something, it has a rightist bent simply because it's about enduring eternal things, which is inherently
and perpetrating them.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant. I see what you mean. The things that are enduring.
Yeah. Things that are enduring. I mean, like you said, nature, right? I mean, it could be like a flower, but a flower dies, but the process of death and rebirth cycles. Things that are eternally returning. This kind of thing. There's this thing that it doesn't have to be political, but there is an ideological. There's a little bit of a valence, whereas that I-directed stuff, the internal, it has more of a progressive, political flavor to it, because you're working out.
You can be writing about everyone and have it still be subjective. Death Metal Guy, I have a formula. I want to respond to this, but Death Metal Guy, I want you to get in first.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think that creating that distinction between the political and the ideological is very important, because while we have almost zero interest in discussing politics as such on the show, it's almost like, well, we don't need to, because we feel like we express ourselves ideologically in the way that we talk about art.
Yes.
Because we believe that art is a serious thing. That it's not merely entertainment, and we think that, or I don't want to put words in my co-host, but when the manner in which I talk about certain bands or their concepts or ideas, what I approve of and disapprove of, I think communicates a lot about where I am personally, ideologically. But I think keeping it sort of unmoored and not specific in the political sense actually keeps it more truthful and more close to the source.
Yes. 100%, 1,000,000%. Yeah, when you're taking art seriously and when you're making art that is legitimately licked by the flames of actual inspiration, it's going to engage things that are political in a way that it can be more like protean and slippery, and doesn't have to be as fixed, but a way of thinking. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm interested in these pseudo political vibe, but it's vibe shit. I'm into vibe shit. I'm not into how. Well, I mean,
you could describe it as vibe shit, but I'll allow myself to be pretentious and to say this out loud. I think that the objective of art is to access certain truths about reality that cannot be expressed purely through language, that must be expressed through the language of metaphor and symbol and aesthetics. And through that, in fits and starts, not very often, we can access something closer to reality than writing an essay on the topic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think we could. I mean, if we thought that was pretentious, I mean, I don't think any of us would be doing any of this shit. I mean, that's it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But Black Metal Guy, you go ahead.
No. This follows well on what you were saying. I mean, art in general, although with certain exceptions, but I think especially concertedly extreme metal is religious music, and I think black metal is extreme metal that understands itself as religious music, right? It realized this is serious. This is a religious devotion. They worked on trying to articulate that over time, right? First through the sort of the satanic thing, it's become more pagan. But it's, and art is, art is, I'm sure you'd basically agree with it. The category of art basically is our secular way of talking about a bunch of the techniques and procedures of religious culture, right? And so it's you can get there the other way through talking about folk music too, and its relationship to ritual and primordial forces. But certainly art, everything we know about high culture art is religious, and so extreme metal operates on this artistic plane at the level of the religious, which is what separates it from punk. Punk is polemical and political for the most part. And if it gets too metaphysical, it starts verging on metal.
And then you get amoebics.
In Discharge and amoebics.
Which does roll,
No, those are our favorite metal bands. I mean, punk bands, really. But basically, it starts verging on metal. Whereas you can get, if you take a... So what I say, metal and extreme metal and black metal in particular is religious music. It's religion has political implications. In metal, all of those implications are right-wing. Various flavors of, I mean, it's, hierarchy, conquest, nationality. This is sort of hostility to modernity. This is all fundamentally right-wing stuff, but it doesn't imply a policy. It doesn't imply a program or a polemic or what you can think, what you can't think, who you can't talk to. This is not a part of the music. And it's and if you take metal and you make it too polemical, it degenerates into punk, right? Like we might listen to certain.
so punk is officially degenerate as far as
you can have it's lower on the hierarchy.
Yeah. Okay.
You can it literally descends. It literally descends from the tier of religion to the tier of pragmatic politics and policy. So there's good. We both listen to RAC bands, but a lot of RAC is political, right? And so what that means is it's like right-wing punk music. And
it's like agitprop from the right.
And so if you take, say, a certain kind of Finnish or German black metal sound and push it so far into the punky, as a lot of Americans are doing these days, it starts to become just kind of this like polemical, political music that, often it's just bad. And when it's good on a different level from the way
you're talking about black metal that moves more towards punk, not only sonically, but also, is that what
it becomes explicitly
like a Kitsa or like Raspberry Bulbs or some shit or like
more stuff after that. A Kitsa is pretty fucking cryptic. I mean, I think more.
I don't know the lyrics. I just know
more like if you listen to too much if you listen to Absurd a lot and you're trying to make music like that, like Absurd or Goat Moon or something, you can end up making black metal that basically sounds like punk and is mostly about politics in a pretty immediate.
And then you're doing a song about Rudolf Hess, and it's all just
yeah. Rudolf Hess, you were the best, the only one that could save the West. You
but
they threw you in a cell. Now you're doing time.
I've heard like 10 songs that are just identical to
that's
a bit I've done before with the death metal guy, but not on air.
Oh, it's good. We want this there. You could reuse stuff. My people haven't heard this.
No, that was a personal in-joke that you just got live.
Nice.
So, but basically, like it's above the political, which is why, I think a common word for this that you've probably seen in writing about neofolk, like if you ever read Heathen Harvest back in the day, or
I know Sage.
Sage is a very cool dude. That's great. If you know that, or if you know a bunch of like the sophisticated hand-wringing articles, the academic writing on neofolk, they always talk about metapolitics.
Metapolitics or apolitia.
Is religion.
Yes.
It's fundamental apprehension. It's apprehension of values on, as the death metal guy was saying, this irrational and immediate plane.
Yeah.
Music shows you what is cool. What you respond to in music is what you actually think. If you think it's cool in music, it's moving something in you. Yeah. It's showing you what you value and what like life, what the will to power is valuing through you.
Yeah. $1,000,000%. Yeah, I wanted to get Sage on here to talk about Heathen Harvest because he has all these conflicted feelings about it and stuff. He owes me some T-shirts. I'm actually going to text him tomorrow.
He got nothing but punished for it, and I'm not even just talking about the usual sort of canceled people. I mean, I think like for him it was hard to. He wanted it to be a place where you could have this kind of non-directly political discussion about art and life and reality, and everyone wanted to make it polemical and political, and us and them.
He's such a smart guy and a sensitive, thoughtful guy, and it's like I wish it's like I was like, man, you should like write a book about Heathen Harvest. He's like, I don't know fucking what.
No, he's brave.
Yeah. He's a good I mean, all right. This is a little bit back down to some earth stuff.
Sounds good.
We
can mix it up.
We love talking about that. That's the thing, is like we love talking about like ordinary ass nuts and bolts music stuff.
The thing that
I'm gonna go make a drink, and by make a drink, I mean pour it into a glass.
Okay.
I'll keep my headphones on.
Right on. Okay. Well, so I'll do a little crowd work while Black Metal Guy
Crowd work.
gets,
So you are like Adam Friedland. There you go.
Kind of. I'm mulling, dude. Give me a break.
Oh, you're Stav. You're skinny Stav.
Skinny stuff, bro.
Oh, dude, I will say the Come Town our show crossover is just like a circle, which I find very funny.
Audience wise.
Oh yeah, dude. Like
I love
like,
Come Town so much, man. Or
yeah.
what it was just it's like it ain't never gonna be like that again, man. Because
it was
Stav went his direction and Mullen just is holding it down, but Stav went
Mullen's holding it down, but he really needed original Come Town is like old incantation. You needed
Pillard.
you needed Pillard and you needed McEntee in the same room together. Because like Disma doesn't interest me at all, and late incantation doesn't interest me. It's like I need those two in the same room to create something truly great.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what I don't think those guys are into metal particularly. They strike me as
probably not.
They strike me as rap dudes, actually. But
all these guys are fucking rap dudes. I mean, one of the most disappointing things about Sam Hyde is, I mean, I like Sam Hyde, but one of the most disappointing things about him and his crew is that like they just listen to rap.
Yeah,
like
I'm the rap guy on our show.
Are you? So. I mean, there's some rap has been very important to me, but it's just not really my shit.
That's kind of how I feel. Like if you're serious enough about music, you can identify things in every style where you're like, yes, of course this is good. Of course it's not all worthless.
Yeah.
But if you just asked me, like, emotionally, I fucking don't like rap.
But some shit. Okay, so something I want to. It's not super nuts and bolts, but just back down to like what's going on in metal. So like I was saying, right? Like okay, so growing up, 90s, 2000s, very important. Like I know what's going on. You get up to like mid 10s when I was like that 2015 era, right? Where I'm doing that band Psalm Zero, and I'm kind of like involved in metal shit. But then that ends. Since then, past 10 years, I've really fallen out of like just what's up. I don't even mean like say what new bands are cool, but like as far as just like trends, like currents, are there new like currents in what's going on that you're just like, this is great that this is happening, or this is bullshit that this is happening, or like, because I've kind of like, the new Pissgrave I fuck with, but they've been around for 10, 15 years, these new stuff that I check out, it sounds like stuff from 10 years ago. I don't have my finger on the pulse of.
Well, I think to start, an important distinction
Wilkins is getting in the pit.
Oh yeah, Wilkins is trying to creep across my keyboard. So an important distinction before we get into that is that I don't know if this will be like a hot take to people or if it'll sound weird coming from a guy who is like a dyed-in-the-wool metalhead, but metal is what I would call at this point like a legacy genre. We're not going to get a new whole subgenre.
That's so interesting.
There's always the possibility, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that largely what's going to happen is explorations and refinements of things that already exist. So if you're looking for this hot new sound for your kids, I don't think that really exists. But I think that there are really cool things and sort of novel developments on already existing currents that are really worthwhile.
I think kind of our hope is that there will be some sort of moment of self-overcoming when, say, you do get, say, something that continues the tradition of black and death metal while sounding radically different. And we've tried to highlight whatever points to that, but it's definitely not guaranteed. And yeah, there's, like the death metal guy said, it's going to be differences that to an outsider might not be that salient, right? Mm-hmm. But something like, we have this concept on the show of like outlaw rock, which is a term we've used for basically new American stuff that's steeped in black metal, but isn't really metal or black metal. So the band Oldowan Gash is a very good example. Grave Pilgrim, Finn, Incan Fire, Strix Ascesis, Maquahital. These are all, and they're all different. Some of this stuff I consider rather musically regressive. It sort of retrenches into rock and RAC gestures, but often in a skillful way. Okay. Some of it is very adventurous. So like the Strix Ascesis, that's like owl. Strix is an owl in Latin. Ascesis is in, an owl that doesn't drink. Is something that has not gotten a lot of attention, but it's fucking brilliant. It's self-produced in a way where some of the tones maybe still aren't that satisfying, but structurally it's really interesting because you'd probably agree with this, Charlie. Like one of every genre has its weak points, right? Or it's things that are underdeveloped rather relative to other things, or it's sort of it's sort of blind spots is too strong a word, but it's things that it like deliberately doesn't focus on. So black metal almost deliberately sets rhythm to close to static in order to explore streaming melody. And when there is a rhythmic change, the rigidity is bent to generate headbangy power, right?
Right.
Like, you go
yes.
There's a force from rigidity. It's deliberately sort of it's almost a parody of something being like white musically, right? There's no funk, there's no funk, there's no soul. It's very sort of it sort of embraces that. But there's a whole way of like, what if you had black metal that was much more focused on rhythm?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of maybe in the way that something like hardcore is, or some of the more technical art rock is. And Strix Ascesis has really cool sort of convulsive rhythmic change-ups from like streaming blast parts into sudden drops, lots of kind of moshy physical energy. Mm-hmm. I think black metal is very inherently physical music, but it's easy for people to think of it as very disembodied because it's rhythmically.
Well, this is a nerdy thing to say, mm-hmm. but it's fucking true. Is that, harmonic rhythm is rhythm, I mean, just
I
mean, but this doesn't refute what you're saying because
you're right about that. It's like the important rhythmic shifts are the death metal guy. And I talk about this. I've always insisted that there's an aggression specific to melody.
Yes.
And part of it is just like, look, if your entire riff is just root note, half step up, which is like half of my favorite riffs. If that's your whole riff,
fucking rules.
I guess I hadn't even thought of that term, melodic, harmonic rhythm.
Harmonic rhythm. Yeah.
It's rhythm. Like, where do you fucking put that extra half step?
Yeah. I mean, if you got a riff where the guitar is going the note and then a half step up and going back and forth, but then the bass on the fifth time, the bass mm-hmm. goes to a different note. And then, and then the guitar goes to a different, and then they all go at the same time. Even if the whole thing is just tremolo blasting, you're dealing with rhythm that's hitting you, with the harmonic. So
that's the time that really matters in black metal.
You
can make a version of it that has much more sort of convulsive and varied. And Strix has put a lot of effort into that. Death metal guy, you like that record a lot too. Do you have some thoughts about that?
I think I'll end up trying to answer Charlie's question from like the other side of the equation, more the death metal side. But the Strix Ascesis record is awesome. Here's the sticker on the front of the CD thing to sell you. It's Forest plus Helmet,
dude. Yeah.
And it's really sick.
Helmet is one of my. I mean, growing up, dude, as a '90s kid, that was like my fifth show, maybe. Helmet.
Yeah, when we covered the record, I thought that it was like Faith No More. Apparently it's Helmet, where he's getting some of those ideas.
All right.
But yeah, I mean the black metal guy gave you a really good description of it. It has a real tense heaviness to it that I don't typically associate with black metal. It's still relatively thinly produced, but there's an emphasis on the bass range within that thinness that really punches. It's really led by the kick drum rather than the snare. which seems like a sort of unimportant distinction, but I think is actually like really crucial to that band.
No, I feel it. Yeah.
I had never even thought of that. Could you elaborate on that a bit, dude? Because I think I know what you mean, but
I mean, honestly, it's kind of a vibe thing, man. You know, when you're listening to,
we were talking the other day on the show about how really in a lot of black metal, the kick in death metal too, the kick drum is like a grace note, and it's the snare that does everything. So is this what you mean? Something different from that? Like you could feel the weight of the kick?
Yeah. I think that different drummers have different points of emphasis, and obviously a lot of extreme metal bands that are operating at really high speeds are going to emphasize the snare primarily because that's what's going to be highest in the drum mix. That's going to be the the root rhythmic anchor.
Well, it's on the one. I mean, typically a blast beat, the snare is on the one, right? I mean,
we can also
it's D beat. I mean, if it's the other way, if it's on.
Well, it's kind of different because like I would say that's actually a change that's occurred over time. Is that sort of the traditional blast beat model is off of those like really fast. I just call them fast thrash beats, those fast skank beats, Slayer beats, whatever you want to call them.
Right, yeah.
And the blast beat is just that accelerated into a higher tempo. Then
keep going.
They turn the beat around and stuff eventually.
And then something changes so instead of leading with the kick, we're now leading with the snare, or we're doing the suffocation style, like simultaneous snare.
Which is a whole other,
which is cool. It's different, and it really changes the rhythmic emphasis.
Yeah. Well, this, this is sometimes one of the things, talking about rhythm also with even just second wave traditional, like black metal or whatever, it's like, is this fast or slow? Because when you've got the snare,
I got two rhythms for you, man. Fast and slow.
No, but I mean, like, when you have when you have the snare not on the one, even when it's fast, it feels actually fast. I mean, to me, like it feels like you're actually like on some punk D beat shit.
That's why blast beats from Siege and Napalm Death feel so fast.
Yeah. And then when you've got the snare on the one, sometimes you'll be headbanging at like half time, like half tempo, you're feeling it like this, even though it's like, it's still.
It can slow it down. It can create a kind of the snare on the one can create verticality, kind of an architectural stillness. Morbid Angel is the best example of that.
Yes.
Yeah. It's yes, it can do that. And as a kid, I actually had a hard time wrapping my head around that aspect of black metal, because I wanted everything to be like Discharge, right?
Yeah.
I found Discharge probably 4 months before. Things happened very fast back then. You find Discharge 5 months before Emperor,
and then
right. And Emperor makes sense because they use the blast beat on the early stuff more as a change up in the way something like Napalm Death does, but some other black metal that was purely blast based, I really did not understand. But you're right; it can either be this sort of like crushing heaviness, and sort of massification, like Morbid Angel, or it can be this endless flow where it sort of. I like the idea that it starts to feel faster when there's more weight on the kick. That makes sense to me. And I think the thing is that a lot of the fastest blast beats, right? You just can't really say, is this on the one or the two? The syncopation takes over so much that I don't have the words to explain it. And a lot of it's just intuitive stuff that happens while playing music. So I think what the death metal guy was talking about is you take the Slayer beat and you speed it up so fast that eventually it's the snare hits that you really hear.
Yeah.
And it's like the snare, you get so far ahead that suddenly the snare is on the one.
Right. Yeah. And of course the player, the rest of the instruments are not going to be just clinically tight.
Yeah.
Probably, so it's there is going to be a sort of painterly way that
for listeners. I mean, some of your listeners, I'm sure I have a ton of index of metal bands, but if you want to check stuff out that does this, I would say Repulsion, Creator, Creator for sure. Repulsion, a few others of those sort of transitional death thrash and proto black metal bands.
Right on, yeah. Creator, I never really checked out, but dude, Repulsion,
dude, old Creator,
pleasure to kill.
Creator, it's
pleasure to kill.
They're one endless pain, flag of hate, dude. Those are fucking insane.
Pain.
Okay, proto black metal thrash. Okay, right. Moving to yeah.
The Endless Pain is more sort of ripping thrash, more and then like Pleasure to Kill is like everyone in the band is trying to play faster than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's you should listen to that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this thing about rhythm though in black metal, and of course, perhaps you could say the more rhythmically convulsive. I love that word. I mean, you could say that once things become more rhythmically convulsive, maybe it stops being as much black metal. I mean, I don't know if these genres. I mean,
that's what we want.
You could get into but I was listening to. I mean, one of my favorites of all time, Deathspell Omega. I mean, I might fair to assume that you enjoy this band. I mean,
I'm not into it.
I'm not into Deathspell.
I am sort of anti-orthodox black metal. We've talked about this on the show a lot of times. That whole scene that was sort of coalescing in the late 2000s really got away from what I was interested in black metal. Going back, Orthodox. I see more to it. Well, the stuff that was associated with Orthodox Satanism, like theism.
Okay. I like not musically Orthodox.
It was a specific. It was an ideological and musical current that was returning black metal to like everything comes from De Mysteris Dom Satanas, plus some like weird death metal influence.
This is so interesting to hear because I knew that
I'm okay with I respect DSO. I think it's just a little bit sort of. It goes very hard towards like prog bloat.
Yeah, well, prog. I mean, I don't know about bloat, but it's fucking I mean, it's prog for sure. Mm-hmm. To me, I mean, one of the things that I love about them. I mean, lyrically, I don't know one way or the other, but as far as just this thing of like convulsive, I mean, or at least just rhythmic stuff that's not harmonic rhythm, but is like proggy or whatever. I mean, they're an example of a band where, I mean, when you listen to this stuff, it's like. There's a ton of proggy, like very marked rhythmic stuff. You could call it convulsive or not, but I still hear that stuff as slow, even though I mean, slow, it maybe slow isn't even the right word, but like enveloping, it still has that black, because to me, black metal or blackened, it's always about atmosphere, even if it's not atmospheric black metal. You know what I mean? To me, when I think of something being like black metal, there is like a mist to it of some kind, which doesn't
space you can go through,
a space that you can enter into rather than something penetrating you. I mean, not that these are, but
this is your black metal is feminine video,
and this is what, and this is Death Metal Guy said you guys were talking about this, but just we'll pivot into that. But just to finish, why Deathspell Omega, I'm gonna lecture some dyed in the wool metal guys about why they're wrong about their own folk music. No, it's not a lecture, but just the fact that that's their progginess. What I experienced, the reason it's not bloat, is that it fuses together. My experience of it is that all those changes and all that prog shit, quote unquote, fuses together into a space to be entered into.
Okay. What I mean by prog bloat is you have a track and then you have a recording of a Roman choir that's like, or a Gregorian chant that's 6 minutes. And then you have another track. And then you have another Gregorian chant track, and the Gregorian chant tracks are all titled numerically.
Yeah, okay, well, like that's gay. I mean, that we can agree. Yeah, no, that's gay.
Omega is there's always the French, the grandeur of the French is that they verge on the gay, and sometimes they spill all the way there. Right?
Yeah, well, Extra Life does best in France, man. We clean up.
I think that pointing to something, not really to approve or disapprove of the band, but I would suggest that one thing that you're identifying is that some of the elements I would suggest that you're attracted there are also the reasons why DSO had such a big appeal to people sort of outside the conventional metal space.
True. Right. I definitely, I do.
And we definitely have our biases, like the fact that DSO was something that sounded very black metal, but that was big with people outside the space, totally biased us against it. However, I went back to it when I had a friend who was into that stuff, and I saw more in it, and I can see what you mean. Like the churning passages, it's very difficult to follow a riff there, but they might be pretty cool. I'm thinking even on like C Monumentum, which is it's not as choppy as Pericletus or whatever, but there are these whole long sections of just like,
Yeah. No,
between the big riffs, and that might be kind of central in a way that's worth thinking about.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm clearly, I'm very good at following hyper complicated shit, and I can't follow a lot of that stuff unless I really, really try it. I mean, it does hit me in waves, Even, I think the Furnaces of Palingenesis is actually kind of sicker than Pericletus. I know Pericletus is like the one or whatever, but
dude, we did a review of Furnaces in the cryptic vault of Terminus. There's an unpublished review of Furnaces somewhere.
Okay, negative though.
Not really.
No, kind of not really. I also think Pericletus. I may actually think Pericletus is their best record.
I think a lot of people do. Yeah,
it works like a screamo album.
Infernal Battles.
Oh well, okay, yes, of course it's Infernal Battles, but but like Pericletus has a lot of sort of screamo post-hardcore stuff to it. That's
which I also like that. I
have a lot of time for that stuff.
I like that connection. What's that band? That other French band that's fucking screamoed out black metal. It's Celeste. It's a little meat and potatoes. But
I like Celeste.
Yeah.
Celeste is sort of it's hard to pay attention to for a long period of time, but it is such a cool vibe.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while, like once every year, I'm like, I want to listen to Celeste.
Yeah, it's just open to spit up. Yeah.
It's all because it's all mid-tempo kind of throwdown riffs.
So, real quick before we pivot, just getting back to that like currents in metal, because I did want to answer that from a death metal perspective. I've got two main things that I want to talk about. One, because I champion this on the show all the time. All the boomer metalheads are going to need to get the fuck over and listen to Brutal Death. All right. The center of gravity in death metal is not located in tomb mold or anything like that. And despite the appearance that it might be for a little bit, it's not located in like the maggot stomp death metal being beat down stuff either. The center of gravity is located in brutal death metal. And that's going to mean you're going to have to like try when you listen to it. You're going to hear some stuff that's pretty fast. But I would say that in terms of what's really going, if there's one band, it's Defeated Sanity.
Yeah. They're very difficult to listen to. So cool.
But they are, as far as I can tell, the center of creative potential in death metal right now.
Okay. They've been around for a while, though. No, aren't they?
They have been around for a while, but I feel like the past 3 records have really been them like at the height of their power. And I think they have found a way to make the jazz death metal thing finally work, and specifically by using the technical tools of jazz to make death metal more extreme, not to do like fucking atheist or cynic stuff where we're gonna like fucking groove out with
I don't like those bands. Good.
Okay. Good.
No, I find that shit's cringe. I don't like it.
That's fucking Kenny G death metal shit.
Charlie, do you know the Defeated Sanity story?
It's like it was a father and son band, right? They're German, right?
And the father was Germany's greatest jazz guitarist.
No kidding.
Who learned the music that his son cared about.
No kidding.
The fundamental DS, the Defeated Sanity riffing style is actually, what's the dad? Is it Lila or Hans?
No, Lila is the drummer.
So it's Hans.
I believe it's, is it Hans or was it?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just profiling. Oh, it's probably Wolf. You know what I'm doing?
Wolfgang,
I'm doing
passed
ethnic
away.
profiling.
You are.
What's the last name of the dad?
It would be Gruber, because it's Lile Gruber is the drummer.
Okay, so Wolfgang Gruber is the dad, who is like one of the greatest
possibly or Hans Gruber.
I'll metal archive it now.
Hans Gruber is the bad guy from Die Hard. Yeah, so probably not Hans Gruber.
Man, you heard that Hans Gruber shit, man? He's fucking killing it, man.
I haven't even seen that movie. I played the arcade game, but somehow I know.
But I would say Defeated Sanity, and also all the bands that are producing on New Standard Elite that probably sound completely interchangeable to people that aren't into that style are all like the center of gravity. I've showed a bunch of it to the black metal guy who correctly respects it deeply and will never listen to any of it.
Yeah.
You know,
except for Defeated Sanity, which I do listen to.
Except for Defeated Sanity.
And a few others, yeah.
But I think this sort of goes with another idea we have, which is one of the big things death metal needs to do is to detach itself from black metal.
Yes.
Death metal...
You can see like for years, like blackened death metal, which I love, but that was like the kind of a cool thing that was happening to death metal, right? Just like blackened or whatever, but it's you feel like it's over or something.
There are bands that can do that well, but I think they're ultimately genres working at cross purposes to one another. Now, as an adjunct, the other thing that I would say where I still see a ton of potential and a ton of
also just real quick note, basically like black metal almost isn't a definite musical term, right? It's an ideological and aesthetic term. And like, so if death metal becomes, and there was a black metal gravity well that was happening in this period when, say, everyone was suddenly becoming really interested in this hitherto death metal was the Chad genre until like 2008, right?
Yes.
And so like black metal bands, even in the Orthodox scene, were trying to get heavier, trying to get more technical and polished, changing the vocals. Black metal becomes the cool thing to do. And the thing is, because black metal was originally just a specific spin on what death metal should be, if you have death metal guys who are trying to be more black metal, it will just become heavy technical black metal. And that can either be good or it can be totally redundant.
Well, that's like deafened black metal in a way. I mean,
yeah. Like if you have death metal guys trying to do like, if it's like death metal getting more like black metal, it just is black metal. And, you know, we have a term for that. It could be war metal or it could be something more arty and refined, but like it sort of stops being death metal. As soon as you're in the black metal gravity well, so like the key is to focus on the medium specific, or the genre specific things, the things that make death metal really difficult to assimilate to black metal.
Yeah.
And then just one last note, sort of branching off the black and death metal thing, there is a place where that still has a tremendous amount of power and is still producing really interesting ideas. And I think we're just now starting to realize how much potential it has, which is in the Paul Ledney style. Like the Profanatica derived bands, current stuff like Prosanctus and Fairy. I'm a huge champion of them. Paimon Gate. That's Jake from Prosanctus and Fairy, who did one of the best records of the year a couple years back. Certain kinds of war metal are starting to trend more in that direction. And of course, Profanatica is still putting out outstanding stuff. But that style in particular, I think, brims with a ton of potential. And it's simple enough that there's a ton of aesthetic play that you can do within it, but there's still kind of melodic and rhythmic ideas that I haven't really heard elsewhere. So I think that's a big opportunity.
Very focused on certain like black metal as death metal in like an old sense. The interview, you would probably like this. It's the J-Dog, Justin Horval interview with Paul Ledney is, I think, I'm not a big interview watcher, but like every year or two, someone puts out a really good interview with someone.
Okay. And is he an interesting dude? Because I know Profanatica a little bit. I mean, I've heard him and I was like, this is cool.
You've seen that interview, right?
Because it's awesome. Dude, because like it completely changes your understanding of that band and where he's coming from. And this sort of links to other ideas that we've had on the show. Like I say that traditional USBM is actually a subgenre of death metal. It's not black metal at all. And Paul Ledney sort of uses that same logic. He considers his music fully death metal. His understanding and his perception of these genres is radically different from how we understand them today. And I think in those older interpretations, there's still a lot of interesting things to find.
One consistent idea for Terminus, which is a modernist idea, and it's in Heidegger and stuff too, is to bring forth the new, you go back to the origin. Or you can't go back, but you reactivate it respectfully, and you follow through on the potentials that haven't been followed through on. And so by not bandwagoning and imitating your immediate predecessors, you access the sources they're accessing at fourth hand, and you leap past them with this re-energization of the origin. that's a radical traditionalist theory of music in the modernist sense, not in the sort of goofy, like, return with a V, we need to go back way,
no, it's a more
right?
philosophically rigorous. I mean, I
Yeah.
sort of get, but I know he's really into uncovering, discovering, and sort of the revealing,
Disclosing the origin.
Just
For Heidegger,
disclosing, yeah.
for Heidegger, it's you got to go back to the ancient Greeks, right? And of course, we could debate with him about that, but like, you know, you go back to just before certain terms and the ideas and ways of seeing the world that emerge from them or implied by them, just before certain terms are covered up by diminished or narrowed versions of them that get associated with basically propositional logic, like the world as, oh, do you have the correct ideas about the world? Do you have the correct representation? Do you have, so like this, so that's his specific thing, is this sort of philological analysis of concepts. But for him, it's how do we uncover our eyes by getting back to this earlier way of thinking about truth, which is that sort of truth as unconcealment, truth as what is revealed to you immediately, which is exactly what we're talking about with art, right? Before, just like half an hour ago. It's this, like, I mean, Heidegger blew my mind. He's kind of the reason that I am a pagan, is I was interested in all this shit before. And then once you read Heidegger's essay about the God literally being in its statue on the altar.
Okay, like, that one I don't know. Yeah,
I was listening to a lot of Death in June and Current 93 at the time too, and basically, like, I was just like, you should. Right, and I was like, everything sort of started to click, and I was like, oh, you could just do this shit for real, right? You don't have to just be interested in, which is that outside in sort of critical appreciation or that sort of distant admiration. You could just be a pagan. And I was like, oh, well, that's convenient because this is what I think is cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, it gets at different ideas of what it means to like do philosophy, or even
exactly
even what it means to like think. I mean, you know, it's like, are these, you know, these artists we're talking about, I mean, sick riffs, metal, I mean, these are ways of thinking. I mean, if
it
expanded,
it has its own sort of epistemological quality too.
Yeah.
Non-reflective thinking.
It seems, well, so from your, I mean, black metal guy, you say, it sounds like you have potentially, I mean, you didn't say this, but I mean, potentially more, I mean, optimism isn't the right word, because death metal guy, you were also saying that you're psyched about what's coming up next, but you were saying, but death metal guy, you were like saying, yeah, you were like, this might sound like a hot take, but the future, what's exciting is reinvestigating what's already been done. How different is, I mean, black metal guy, it sounds like your thing about going back is your thing that you just said about going back to origins in order to jump over what's there. Is that a different view of what's about to happen metal wise, or is it actually a similar?
I think it's more like something we would like to happen. And it's more like, rather than going back to, it's more like reactive. It's more like letting the origin speak through you, letting it work through you, rather than like going back to it. But it's I think more like it's something we've talked about on the show. And every time we find something that points towards that, we say, this is good. I think metal is at a point kind of like where jazz was in the 70s. Right, where there's like a lot of the jazz I like best is sort of like aggressive, like modal jazz, or like minimalist Afrocentric free jazz or whatever.
I'm sure, I'm sure you're a late train guy, you know.
Right, the Graveland of jazz, right, is this sort of stuff. That stuff is awesome, but at the same time, it's that stuff is awesome, but there's also this confusion about where the genre goes, and what ends up happening is it gets captured by the Academy.
Well, the 70s is when that happens. Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of good stuff being put out, but there's also this sort of capture and loss of essence. And then like metal is at kind of a similar decision point, I think, where you are a legacy genre. You have all these you have this enormous store of technique and compositional know-how. And the question is, where do you go from here? Do you get like self-overcoming, or do you continue being a legacy genre? I mean, death metal guy, what do you think? Because I think, well, you might not mean anything different from me.
So
right?
So
like,
here's
what you're
my
saying
thing.
is like, okay, go.
Well, so the tendencies that we have seen in metal over the past probably about 20 years, pretty much since like you and I really got into extreme metal, has been new aesthetic movements or new sort of like micro genres developing by taking an element from the parent genre and hyper focusing on it. So let's say, so for instance, something that I really like is DSBM, which was maligned for a long time and is now extremely popular, but we call it post black metal now, or
we call it NSBM.
Or it's NSBM sometimes. So DSBM is taking a potential that already exists in like second wave black metal and honing in on it, taking only the slowest and most mournful parts and expanding based off of that.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's potential for that sort of thing to continue happening. Let's take something like Slam Death as that develops in the mid to late 90s. I mean, that is really built off the back of a single breakdown on a single Suffocation song, and an entire subgenre emerges from that.
Was it Effigy of the Forgotten or which?
Yeah, it's a Legion of Veracity.
Yeah, Legion of Veracity. Yeah,
yeah. The breakdown on there that launches. Yeah. Now I love Slam Death, so I guess it's sort of an academic question. Is like, does the development of Slam Death in response to the breakdown of Legion of Veracity, does that indicate an actual new idea? Or does that just represent a further development of something that already exists in its parent? So I'm the kind of guy where it's like I said, we're metalheads. I like death metal. I'm totally happy with never getting another parent genre like death or black metal, as long as we can continue to uncover new hidden potentials in things that already exist. Cool. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that there is going to be a sea change, like an entire radically new way of presenting this music. Yeah. But I'm saying that I don't care if there is or not. And I don't think we're missing. That doesn't mean the genre is dead. It is, when I say legacy genre, it doesn't mean that it's over. It means that it is now this contained unit within which we have the roots probably of all future techniques. And then future ideas will be developed from those roots or through unusual combinations of those ideas that already exist. But that's not a bad thing.
This is exactly the kind of thing that I would not have pictured you would say that, and that's interesting. Yeah. No, because
I think the new thing, like, we can't imagine, like, there's one way of thinking about this where it's like, oh my God, when's the next big thing? When are we going to get Zorbcore? Right? Right, I just made it up.
You just made it. Right.
Yeah, like, when are we going to get like some?
Am I supposed to know what Zorbs are?
No, some unimaginable new genre of extreme metal, and it's probably not going to happen. I think that's right, Death Metal Guy. Like, we have a well-grounded tradition with its range of possibilities. I mean, so maybe the optimistic place is that where we are is where the classic.
This will link to something that you and I have talked about.
Maybe the optimistic place is where we are, is where classical music was in 1750, right? That would be sick.
Could I mean, like, although I don't know, the development of European art music since then, I don't think you could characterize that as like a honing in on specific elements. You know what I mean?
No. Well, maybe not honing in on specific elements, but having an established vocabulary.
Yeah.
I don't think. What I would love is for it not to be a narrowing, but also what the Death Metal Guy is saying, it doesn't have to be a narrowing, right? Like, you focus on a specific element and somehow an entirely new possibility space comes out of that. Like Brutal Death. I mean, so Slam kind of is Slam has kind of ended up as a cul-de-sac, but like, it's really influenced Brutal Death and hardcore. And, Brutal Death hones in on a very limited set of things in Suffocation and Morbid Angel and a few other bands, and refines and exaggerates them. Brutal Death really is qualitatively different from these other things before it, and has, I mean, an enormous space of potential beyond it.
I don't listen to a ton of that music, but I know the sound. I know enough to know that it is quite new.
You would like it.
So if that's, we're not talking about Are we talking about like Devourment and shit like that, or no? That's more slam,
yeah.
right? Or that,
Devourment's pretty low, right?
I fuck with Devourment, yeah. But like, but as far as
sorry, chat, indie folk metal, new genre boom. Well, that is how journalists think of it, right? There's a fetish for novelty.
Yes,
the novelty fetish. Basically, what the death metal guy gets at is we reject the novelty fetish, right? We're not like artistic reactionaries. We don't just think it needs to be like, it doesn't need to be Dawn's Slaughter Son over and over again forever. But like it's the idea that newness is this kind of total and pure thing, and that like it supersedes and transcends and invalidates what came before.
Right.
We totally reject that. The source of energy and authenticity is various origin points that happen along the tradition. And so, and it's certainly also not like willy-nilly hybridization. Like obviously good metal bands listen to music that isn't metal or that was before metal or is sideways to it and it informs it some way. But like the idea that like, oh, we can get Zorbcore by we can combine elements of black and death metal with elements of Zorb.
Well, yeah,
it's not going to happen.
There's been so much proliferation of subgenres within metal that have formed like completely avoiding that kind of pastiche. That
exactly.
About, you know,
it's anti-pastiche.
It's very the word organic. I was like the word organic is this like facile word that everyone uses, but to some extent a sort of uncontrived something that does come from uncovering origins, you know, rather than
there's a lot of baggage associated with organic, which ironically is humanist enlightenment baggage. But if we remove it from that, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. But so would you actually say then, not to overdetermine this, but when you're talking about like new parent genres, right? Like the fact that I think you did. I don't want to seize on to something that you didn't exactly say, but death metal guy, it sounded like you were saying that death metal and black metal are themselves parent genres. Like, was that the last time that there was a generation of so-called self-contained parent genre? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is Doom its own parent genre? I'm not even picking at something. I'm just like free.
Don't talk. Doom is too messy. We can't go there right now.
No, I figured.
Doom is very messy. There's an argument that it's not a real
thing. We'll go. We'll do that later. Yeah.
Doom rules, but it might not be a thing. Anyway,
Doom has never been tried. Yeah.
It's true. It's never been tried. You know,
I mean, chat says, real Doom metal has never been tried. I love that.
Okay, one parent genre, I'm using that very loosely. I don't have like a super hard and fast definition for that. But as far as like a thing that produces under it subcategories that go into further niches. As far as the last time something happened, okay, well, part of this comes down to like cultural perspective, what things are. Have there been novel developments since then? Yeah, there have been, but I generally don't like them, and I'm not sure that I really consider them metal. Right. So for instance, and here's where I try to, it's like, we love gatekeeping and being reactionary on the show. That's a cool thing. Like, metal should be those things. However, I try to be like, I get where the kids are coming from, and it's okay when they do new things.
More than me. I'm a huge hater. Yeah,
I'm a big time hater too, but I guess it's like when kids come up with something new and I dislike it, it's like, that's okay. I'm supposed to, because I'm a 35-year-old man. I'm not supposed to like things that 17-year-olds like, you know? So for instance, one of the last big kind of new things that developed about 10 years ago would be like gent.
Yeah.
I don't like gent. I only sort of tangentially consider it metal. I don't really think it is
tangentially.
But it's
I hadn't even thought of
more like hard. It's like hardcore. It's like prog hardcore.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of gent this entire time. It didn't even come in my mind
exactly.
as a form of metal. It's just my guitar student bring it up, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
But it's a relatively new thing that has produced movements within itself with different aesthetics and kind of stylistic emphases. I don't like it. I don't think it's very useful to anything in extreme metal or the things that I'm interested in, but it is a real thing. But I think there's an argument to be made that a lot of the biggest and most obviously novel things that are going to come out are probably going to push outside of metal, because speaking for myself, I bet it applies to the black metal guy also. Metal is a riff-based music, and the big developments will come from going beyond the riff form. And if you go beyond the riff form, you're probably not playing metal anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're quite so. Yeah, we are. I think maybe maybe our unit of interest is almost more extreme music than it is metal proper. And so if you get I mean, yeah, you can go adjacent to metal, you can go before metal, but you could draw on all that. I mean, Gent is a good, like, Gent has influenced certain things. Like, I mean, another good example, right? I mean, Charlie, you were saying you listened to our Knocked Loose review.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I was thinking about Knocked Loose in a, when I said in that review, it's like, hey, the fact that the black metal guy doesn't like it is good, because if these hardcore kids from Kentucky were doing that we immediately liked with no reservations, it probably means that it's like insufficiently,
it's compromised. Yeah.
Right.
I don't want them to imitate me. It's okay.
Yeah,
they can do their thing.
But Knocked Loose is highly Gent influenced.
Oh, is it? Is it? I mean, it just sounded like, I don't know. To me, it just sounded like Converge. It just sounded like Jane Doe plus some grooves that were a little bit new metal influenced, but barely at all.
That's like Roots Sepultura kind of stuff.
That was my argument, right? But like, there is really a difference, and a lot of the things that make it more ignorant are coming from Gent and Beatdown, and like just listening to, like, I don't know, like hip hop and EDM. So Gent has fed into things a little closer to our home turf that way. Another example would be Sectioned. Death metal guy. Do you remember Sectioned?
Oh yeah. I listen to that album regularly.
Exactly. So they have another band called Frontierer that's a little more straight up, like Gent meets hardcore meets stuff like Helmet or Botch. I don't really like Frontierer. Charlie, this might be of interest to you. Sectioned, though, is so they're from England, and they're like, I guess, a grind or power violence band, but it's kind of hard to apply either of those terms. It's very fast hardcore that has the kind of abrasively, deliberately digital tones you get in Gent, right? Yeah, and I would say Gent uses those tones, like the line in stuff. Gent uses line in for evil. Sectioned uses line in for good. Right? Like,
okay.
It's like cool line in tones. Everything sounds a bit crushed, but there's still like spontaneous live musicianship happening. It's really fast. It's really nasty. It's there's something clean about it, which is not sterile.
Yeah, I mean, that can be brutal, dude. I mean, digital distortion. I mean, period.
Exactly.
I mean, that's like, yeah.
Yeah, what's the Sectioned record? I'm going to look on Bandcamp.
I forget what it's called. The way I would describe it is sort of like hyper digital ion dissonance, if you ever listen to them.
I've heard the name, but I don't know what that is. Yeah.
They're
kind of discordance access type shit.
No, they were more like contemporaries of Despised Icon. They came from the same scene, but it's like if Despised Icon were the metal band, Ion Dissonance were the hardcore band.
Okay,
but sort of like similar stuff going on.
Yeah.
The record is called Annihilated, and they haven't done anything in quite. This feels new to me still, but they haven't done.
It's like a decade old.
2019. But it was really good, and I don't know if you could say it points toward. It doesn't point toward a new parent genre, but it is itself very new.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to. You can't imagine it being composed any earlier than it was, and you can imagine getting other stuff out of it.
Yeah. I think the idea that extreme metal is in a place like jazz in the 70s, I think that the more I'm thinking about that, I think that makes sense, because there's, because I go pretty deep on jazz as well. And I can think of tons of deep stuff from the 80s, 90s, all the way to today. And it's not, restructural. It's
Right.
not a new language. It's just new
And,
stuff with the language, and
good songwriting.
and it's still deep. I mean, it's so yeah. It may not be necessary. Jazz may be a legacy genre at this point. It's
But I would love metal not to be where jazz is, and I think it's like a cautionary tale. And I think so. We try to like just emphasize all the energy points and grounds for optimism we can. It's like, no, sorry. I had something quite clearly for a second, and it may have slipped me. But basically, like part of the problem with jazz is, I think jazz was to some extent subscribed to the teleological model of creation.
Yeah.
It was caught between this modernist, progressive impulse, progressive in how we make music. We need to keep progressing, superseding new. And I think, and caught between a more deep sort of blues and Afro music traditionalism that emerges in some of the jazz that remains the most vital. Like I've seen Wadada Leo Smith once or twice. Like that was fucking insane.
Yeah.
That shit is where it's at, man. Hakeem Bey on like on drums. Like,
it's a Hamid Drake, I think.
Sorry, wait, no, it is Hamid Drake. Sorry,
Yeah.
Hakeem Bey is like a philosopher.
Yeah, Hakeem Bey.
Absolutely. No. I know it's Hamid Drake.
Temporary autonomous zone. Yeah,
I know it's Hamid Drake.
I'm glad you brought up Hakeem Bey though. That rules. But yeah, we don't.
I don't even like really like. I used to read people who talked about Hakeem Bey. I mean, no, Hamid Drake on drums was fucking sick. That stuff is still it's not new, but it's still quite vital because it is basically traditionalist. It's aggressive traditionalist music. And so jazz kind of got caught there. I almost wonder, I hope that metal has a longer track record because it is self-conscious. It is not trying for certain kinds of self-undermining novelty. And
right,
so
that's interesting. Yeah, self-undermining novelty. You're thinking maybe that it'll have longer staying power by not trying to stay in a way.
Yes,
or staying by not trying to prolong itself.
Because it's not addicted to novelty. We could have the continued, more slow-paced development of a well-defined tradition, and maybe you can do a lot of new stuff with that, and maybe in 30 years, we'll still be talking about Black and Death and grindcore as reference.
Yeah.
But like the music that's coming out really won't sound like any of those things that happened as they existed in the 90s. And I think that is true of a lot of modern black metal stuff. It just doesn't sound remotely like Norwegian bands from the 90s or Hellhammer.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say how much, but a lot, definitely. But to really trace the effects of like what, the institutionalization or academicization of jazz. I mean, it's starting jazz programs in conservatories in the 70s. Clearly, that had a huge effect on the music in different ways, whether it's a fragmenting or a stultifying or something. Metal, it doesn't seem like there's any movement whatsoever to bring metal.
Good. That's reassuring.
No. I mean, I wouldn't. It's hard to even. It's like there's so much there. But at the same time, it's almost impossible to imagine. Just there seems to be no will to even do it from either side, from metal or from.
No, I can. You see, I have a much more negativistic take than you guys on that. I think that there are certain rough edges aesthetically that will need to be sanded off in advance to allow that to happen. And part of the journalistic process around metal, it's not in a conspiratorial way, is part of doing that.
I'm with you on that, death metal guy. I think it's a huge risk. I think it's one thing we're trying to combat is the conservatorization of music, of metal.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You can go to the Berklee School of Music to study metal now.
Yeah?
Yeah, basically.
There's guys that are, giving talks at universities about,
But it's only Meshuggah though. They're not doing like fucking impetuous ritual.
There's all this cultural studies. There's all this cultural studies bullshit about how like black metal is like an emancipatory genre that can help. Black metal needs to be liberated from the actual black metal.
Decolonizing black metal.
Decolonize black metal, yeah. And there's all like
kill me.
Yeah. These people have a lot of institutional. None of them matter remotely to the music, but they have a certain kind of institutional imprimatur, and you can imagine basically toothless proxy versions of this music being made in an institutional context like you can with anything else. And like, think about it this way: there are kids now taking rock band classes, right?
Yeah, that's
and the first time someone did it, it was cute, right? I really like the movie School of Rock. I think it's adorable. But like, it's the first time someone did it, it was cute, but it's really bad.
It is, yes.
And that will more and more move into schools. And so you see a line between the kids who are learning Green Day songs in rock band class now and the journalistic and academic sanitization of extreme metal, or the way that like it's becoming more and more acceptable to view it as to do the sort of technique mongering Berkeley type stuff in metal. It's all those kids are gonna catch up to all of this.
I think the institutionalizing of the conservatory, getting extreme metal into conservatories, I think that's way more dangerous probably than having humanities people writing about it. Like,
you're right.
Yeah, because people can write all they want about like Varg's fucking whatever, what a rune means to some guy. But as far as actually, as far as actually having someone have to learn defeated sanity properly and get grades on it,
you're right.
That would be grim. Like that.
Right. That fucking murders it, because the conservatory model of music just is like, I mean, there are people who go there wanting to compose and in a serious way, but so much of it, there's like, the people who go to study classical music academically, so many of them just want to become a really good, proficient violinist. It's very sad.
You go and you learn to create music in a way that your teachers will approve of.
Yeah. Well, that's just a different thing though, because then it's not really art. It's really just more of being like a worker. I mean, that's cool.
A performer. That's true. Like being fifth chair in the New York Symphony is like pretty cool.
That's
pretty cool.
That's badass, but it's just not the same. It's not the same thing as
exactly. It's not related to the
art. It's
not related to the continued vitality of the thing.
Right.
Yeah, having to learn defeated sanity from charts would be awful.
I mean, really, like, but yet somehow though, the idea of someone completely on their own transcribing some defeated sanity, that to me is absolutely beautiful.
We've already got that. That's Nikhil.
Yeah. Is a friend of yours?
Nikhil Talwalkar. He's a kid who he's a grown man now. He is a possibly like once in a generation level performer.
Say his name again, because it broke up a little bit.
Nikhil Talwalkar.
Okay.
He's out of Connecticut. He is playing drums for tons of different brutal death metal bands. He's like a live drummer for Malignancy sometimes, and he's, I think, 19 or 20 years old now.
Damn.
And he is also a kid with a jazz background who has actually done some jazz fusion stuff on his time that's very cool. And I think he's going to, if I recall correctly, it's NYU for music right now.
Okay.
He's incredibly talented, but his solo project is called Anal Stab Wound. So his heart is in the right place.
Yep.
and it's technically fucking insane music, and he's a very cool guy, incredibly talented, greatly respected.
He plays a lot of instruments too at a very high level.
He plays every instrument at this insane level.
What is it? Anal Stab Wound? It's like brutal death, or
it's extremely technical, very challenging brutal death. It's awesome. But no, so the flip side, how you can do this, unless you're a wonderkind like that, is the other side of the wonderkind, which is, have you ever heard the project Syphilic? I'll get getting back there for you. Syphilic is a pretty cool one-man brutal death metal band coming out of Detroit. The guy behind it is Brian Fogg, who is he's programming drums. He's doing all the guitar and bass and vocals, and it is incredibly technical and sophisticated music. His second album, Behind Bars, he transcribed longhand while he was in jail. And it is
art from prison, long, rich tradition.
Yeah. But I find it fascinating because he said in an interview that he's one of those guys who does not need access to a guitar and able to be able to write out his music longhand. He just wrote the whole thing in jail and then came out. So he's obviously a genius, who any conservatory would be lucky to have, but his music is the most vile and fucking evil shit in the world. Like, you get arrested if you wear one of his t-shirts out in public. And I think that
you mean based on what? Like based on
it is
imagery or
imagery
because it actually shows social reality.
Yeah, it is a
lyrically
level of lyrically and art that displays the sort of sexualized violence that will never be able to enter the academy, which is actually actually a reason that I think is crucial that we maintain a lot of these rough edges. The highly transgressive elements, I think, are part and parcel of extreme metal, and you can't have one without the other.
And
you cannot.
Sorry, go.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you removing all the sort of highly transgressive aesthetics and imagery from this stuff is the beginning of a sort of entryism for the style into polite society. So it may seem silly or juvenile that I ardently defend stuff like Artery Eruption on those grounds, but I think that it's essential.
And ironically, like if you tried to decode Civilic's politics or the political implications, it's probably left wing or like closer to something that like a lot of people could find acceptable. But it's because it's so focused on the pathological underbelly of, what it's like to be the urban and suburban poor around Detroit, that it's, people don't like seeing the realities or thinking about them. And, really, regardless of the political implication, I mean, clearly, guys, we get a lot out of Civilic, and it's because it's profoundly humane at the best, in the best way, right? He's altruistic, right? He wants the best for people, and he sees the horrible suffering around him. And, there's a will to power to that too.
Yeah, right? But see but you might get absorbed into the academy if you deep down, if he won't.
That's not.
No, that's what we mean. You can't. It's an interesting thing. It's like he never does, like, he's never explicitly political, and because he's just focused on all the shit he thinks is fucked up, he rubs your noses in a way that's kind of uncapturable.
Okay. Yeah. But that's lyrics though. A lot of stuff. We're talking about, musically capturing stuff. I feel like the conservatory could like capture, can just like strip, strip the poetics away.
Well,
and just be
that's
like,
why So you're talking about this. So I'm talking about the humanities academics.
Yeah,
conservatory for sure.
Yeah, that nerd shit because the world of jazz studies and even classical music, it's so autistic. It just gets on some like not even caring. The implications don't matter at all. Right. It's just like check out the Meshuggah fucking polyrhythms, which I don't know if you guys are into that shit, but I'm just, it's so cringe to me.
I like Meshuggah a lot. I don't like any of the bands that follow them.
Yeah. Okay, right on. But you do like them. I can knock it down. Yeah.
I think the claims made for them by musician-y dudes are stupid. I think Meshuggah is just like a relatively musically sophisticated hardcore band.
Right.
Like the classic Meshuggah records, like I don't really like the vocals. They kind of have like a James Hetfield kind of monotony to them.
Yeah, that's like lion vibes.
But like the music, I like Heavy Chugs as much as the next guy. But I think so if it's important to be, if brutal death is one of the potentials, as from a black metal perspective, it's also important to suck. Because the conservatory can never capture sucking.
I think I know what you mean. I mean, that is a punk thing, though. That is a punk thing.
Well, it is.
I just want to say,
it's important to extreme music.
Real quick, some of your people in your chat have started looking up Sevilla covers.
Nice, holy shit, these Sevilla covers.
Yeah.
I think these are your people because I haven't seen these folks before.
Possibly,
right.
but
yeah. So I'm definitely it is from punk, but it's important in extreme metal. I mean, a lot of the bases we're building on, Kill 'Em All, first 3 Slayer albums, Motor. Yeah. These are all hardcore based. And for me personally, I'm from the Ron Ashton school of guitar playing, but I'm not as good as Ron Ashton, right? So it's definitely the hyper minimalist barbarism, and you're trying to. I mean, okay, in terms of what my actual technical ability, it's probably more like drunk Rob Darkin, but or Amoebics or something. But what you're interested in is you're not interested in technique per se, except as much as you can get something cool out of what you've got. What you're interested in is form, it's songwriting. And there's a good way, there's a bad way to suck. We've all heard stuff that's just shambolic performance-wise and doesn't hang together. But there's also a good way to suck. So you strive for the good way to suck and to say as much as you can with as little as possible.
Yeah. Well, you may be speaking to a certain dysfunctional core. It's not even about sucking overall, but some kind of void inside that it makes the thing wounded in some way.
Good bands never try to suck. But you got to do what you can with what you've got. And sometimes the maybe not struggling past technical limitation can have maybe, a heroic woundedness to it. Sure. Yeah. Or the classic example of that would be Mutilation, which is, on his second record, Maynard could compose astonishingly sophisticated neoclassical riffs. Do you know Mutilation?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, so this is where a lot of things you like in DSO or Leviathan come from. Vampires of Black Imperial Blood. He just comes up with these soaring, richly harmonized, sort of sighing vampire melodies that he cannot fucking play. Okay. And there's something about his, but the form is materialized there just enough. The form is clear. If you're a music guy, you can tell, you can hear the melody behind the playing. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that when there is a certain vibe to a lot of people write what falls under their fingers. I mean, even if you're not being even if you're not being lazy, even if you're focusing and pairing, you're still not reaching. You're just you think you're free flowing, but you are actually kind of limited by what happens to work. Or at least playable. So when someone's writing stuff that they can't play, probably they're reaching. I mean, they're probably really searching in a
there's a heroic striving to it.
There's
it's Promethean.
Yes,
you can see Maynard was a junkie. He was kicked out of the LLN for being a junkie. Okay. And he was you could see him sort of nodding out in his wheelchair, trying to.
Oof. Yeah.
Death metal guy. Rules. Yeah, you're even more of a Mutilation guy than me.
I'm a huge Mutilation guy.
All right,
I've got an LLN tattoo. Yeah.
When are they from? The 2000s or what?
No,
he's still going.
Mid to late 90s.
Okay, but they started.
Mutilation gets started in the mid 90s, and then Maynard. I mean, he's been doing music for 30 years. He just put out a new Mutilation record for the first time in 15 years. I think it was last year. It was one of the best albums of the year.
It's great.
It's so fucking good. You see, so that's one thing. I'd also like to say that the case of Mutilation, where you're this sort of wounded animal doing this sort of torture DSBM stuff, that is the exception to the rule. Metal shouldn't be like that. Maynard is just a genius who manages to pull that off. I think that reaches toward a level of considered humanism, let's call it, that typically shouldn't be part of the equation, but he makes it work.
Interesting. You're saying his woundedness and fucked upness, and you're saying actually just DSBM or the depression of DSBM in general is you're saying with this as a beautiful exception is kind of too humanist for metal? Is that kind of what you're just?
I think that it's largely too humanist for. I wouldn't say DSBM as a whole, because I think a lot of DSBM is like it's after completely. I don't know if you would call most DSBM, especially nowadays, like black metal proper. I think that it's after very different things.
Okay, I don't know new DSBM. I just know the most obvious, just Zaster.
I think the focus on, let's say that what mutilation does is susceptible to interpretation in a familiar humanist academic way. So even the way you phrased it, sort of this like beautiful, this sort of woundedness that creates beauty. Like think about like, your favorite Marxist professor's favorite record is, something by Leonard Cohen, right? And it's like, the cracks are wet. The cracks are where the light gets in, man. Like there's an aesthetic coding of the dialectic. It's highly troped to woundedness, the success of endless failure. Think of Adorno or something. Another good point. And it's our finitude relative to the Abrahamic God who doesn't exist but still exists.
Another thing about mutilation, though, is within that woundedness, if you read like mutilation lyrics, Maynard is taking on the character of not just a guy who's depressed and wants to kill himself, but an awful fucking vampire lord in a ruined castle who wants to kill himself. And that seems like a distinction without a difference, but it's actually a tremendous difference.
And he's very sad because despite his crushing victories, he can, every maiden, the next, you suck the blood out of the finest virgin, and then you're left wanting another. There's a basically like the way of looking at these things that's not sort of like humanist angst is more just sort of like that this is the suffering of someone who's chosen a very dark path. And so a lot of Maynard is about sort of like the loneliness of a sort of conqueror outlaw, right? It's about being.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Yeah,
and also that it's frequently about not wanting to die, but a sort of empowered and forceful self-destruction.
Yes, that's a lot of the mode of self-sacrifice, the mode of wanting to die in black metal is Heldentoad.
Right. It's not. It's not Kurt Cobain. It's Mishima.
Exactly.
Okay.
You accept death and you accept death and suffering.
I could only assume.
You accept death and suffering as the price of heroic action. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, even though we might look at Maynard and see something kind of fumbling about it, or like, we make Maynard jokes all the time, right? There's something a little bit comic. There's something, there is this sort of, his grand heroic quest is he's trying to write that soaring Court of the Vampire melody, and he just can't quite like get his hands around the fingering, right? I mean, like, that is his heroic struggle, and it is victorious because we like mutilation. We don't think it sucks. So there's kind of a way that he's accepting this sort of this artistic limit. He's putting himself out there in a way that I think is very affecting.
It kind of gets like, I don't know if I'm stretching this, but like talking about just humanism versus this kind of heroism, this heroic mythologized stuff. I mean, it starts to make me think, like archetype of the hero, it's like part of that archetype is overcoming adversity, and often some early overcoming struggle, but it's different than the sort of humanist sense of being broken, and being broken and wounded is constitutive of humanity because you're like vulnerable and frail.
Exactly.
It's a different kind of thing of death. I mean, I like when it comes to, not on a heroic tip, but on a DSBM tip. I mean, Zaster just being the sort of like, I don't know if it's just sort of like most known version of that. I mean, his vibe, when I hear that, that's depression that seems to become inhuman, where you get onto that, and not just him, but just people that I
Mhm.
know who, just the depression have killed themselves and stuff. I mean, there is this sense where you're like, you get between worlds where depression gets to this point where you're not even like, it's not even like the passions of a human. It's like
Right.
you're already halfway to becoming like inorganic matter.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
what death is. You are no longer, you're material, you are now like returned to material. So it's like when you're happy, like that Zastich, like telepathic with the deceased, it's like, it's not just like I'm going to kill myself. It's like I'm already in two worlds. I'm half human. I'm on the
This
way
is like
out.
this is like the death metal guys take on Mortician and a certain kind of
Well,
DSBM.
I heard you make that in passing reference to in one of your things. You were saying how early Mortician is DSBM. I've only listened to a little Mortician. It really sucked from what I heard. I mean, really, I was like, why is this even on the fucking table? But I assume there must be stuff I'm not getting.
This is what we mean about the importance of sucking.
No, it's good. It's good that you don't like it. That reifies its centrality within like traditional reactionary metal canon. You know what I mean? Like a dude who like composes stuff for like who composes chamber music shouldn't fucking like Mortician.
Yeah,
it should be guys with fucking Mortician tattoos.
Yeah.
Like
okay,
you know,
right.
You can play notes, man. Mortician isn't about notes.
It's not about fucking notes, dude.
Yeah.
It's about like.
But is it about rhythms or like? I mean, I'm playing dumb here a little bit.
I know.
No.
It's because I know the kind of things that make something good other than notes and shit. But I was just not even feeling the vibe. I don't know. But is early Mortician a little more? I mean, DSBM is something. I don't know.
Well, Mortician is. Mortician is like a multi-hour conversation in and of itself, but I'll try to give you like a nutshell version. So Mortician is spiritually really a grindcore band before it is anything else. If you strip away the sort of digitization and the weirdness of Mortician, you are left with Repulsion, and oddly enough, you're left with a lot of Celtic Frost and Slaughter. All the bands they covered are really indications of like what they're most influenced by. But what happens is by accelerating the tempos into just like insane, inhuman places, by like crushing all the distortion and down tuning so intensely and turning the vocals into this like monotonous grunt, what you end up creating is a kind of noise music. Especially like we covered on a recent episode, something like Last Days of Humanity. It is very comparable in its execution. For me, though, there is something about the sterility of Mortician, the sort of the coldness, the sort of simple, like the brute simplicity of it, the fact that the riffs are largely just like purely chromatic. It's like like frets 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, that's
4, 3, 2, 1.
Like, but that's the thing. War metal. I don't hate war metal, and that's like you don't go above the 4th fret on like whatever.
I don't really like war metal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love it either, but I'm saying like I get when someone you put on like whatever like Black Witchery, I'm like yeah.
Well, I think the other thing though is with Mortician, it's like it's the drum machine. Drum machine is what makes Mortician.
Yeah.
The fact that there are no fills, the fact that it is just there to blast or to play super slowed down rock rhythms for the slow Celtic Frost riffs.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there's no effort whatsoever to hide how inauthentic it is.
Yes.
Something I really appreciate. I love extreme metal that uses drum machines where it is very obviously a drum machine.
Yep.
And where it uses the drum machine as an instrument itself, not as a replacement for a human drummer.
Yeah. Well, no, the coldness. I mean, if you want coldness, that's. I mean,
well, I think it's also because one of my favorite bands of all time is Godflesh.
Godflesh is one of my favorite. I mean, I don't know if you might be interested. I made like an hour-long video about the music of Justin Broderick going from.
I did say I haven't watched it yet, but I did see that in your.
I must say it's high value. high value internet content. Gotta say, it's not just takes. But yeah, he's one of my heroes up there with like fucking Miles Davis, man.
I love Broderick. Well, I don't love everything he's done, but I get where he's coming from.
How could you, given how much he did. But yeah,
I'm me, so for me, it's all about Street Cleaner,
Yes.
And so to me, Street Cleaner and Mortician are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny though, because like with Godflesh, to me, that stuff, even if it's even in its rawest form, Street Cleaner, that stuff is actually like elegant riff writing, Christ Bait Rising, like that riff is like not.
That's one of the best riffs of all time.
One of the best riffs of all time, and it's not ignorant. Like that is, I mean, it's like raw, but like that's not like, it's. I don't know. I mean, is it even raw? I mean, just note wise, his note choice. I mean, his stuff is just very like.
Well, yeah, you've got that huge keening octave slide and stuff, but I'd also say, I think that the later work of Broderick and in a naturally associated fashion, the later work of like Michael Gira has ended up sort of, plastering over its early origins as a sort of intensely physical body music. They've had, these sort of like high-minded concepts, these sort of like literary influences and stuff, but Street Cleaner, you can watch videos of them playing it live and people are moshing to it slowly, but they're moshing to it. And I think that's crucial, So I think that in a similar way, Mortician is a sort of like reptile music, not in the sense of, this is fucking dumb and heavy, dude. There's something like deliberately nihilistic and cold and inhuman about it. Even like Mortician lyrics that are just like, body stabbed, head torn off, blood pools, just absolute, and even the violence becomes inhuman.
It's got a Gerard Swans vibe, super image.
It's very like Mortician is like an industrial band. It's humans playing like machines.
I mean, I basically
they have a drum
fishing for you to. I'm just fishing for you to convince me that just to Mortician pill me, because it's like I need,
Look, I don't usually. It's really not for everyone. Only the death metal guy actually listens to Mortician on the reg.
I do,
but I don't listen to it, but I appreciate it. And I think, like there's some interaction between the rigidity of the machine and the fleshy, one of our buzzwords for death metal, sort of fleshy materiality, the raw corporeality of the body. So you get this like machinic arbitrariness in their composition for the blast beat riffs, but then they're being played in this very sort of, slick flesh slapping across the floorboards kind of way, which is just like, like what even is the fingering? What are the notes we're playing? We have no fucking idea, right? It's like, it's all the meow. It's like the Meow Mix theme song, forward and backward and sideways over and over and over again. And it's,
or slow riffs of such an elemental simplicity that they're genius. I mean, the main riff to Zombie Apocalypse is just one of the greatest riffs.
The parts that are catchy are the slow parts, and those are the parts that are like Celtic Frost or Beatdown Hardcore or whatever. It's the whiplash. Like Mortician is all whiplash effect of.
Yeah. I'm gonna return to them with this sort of like a Mortician pilling session in mind, because I listened to them like way back in the day, didn't like them, and then there was that wave of memes that were they're kind of based on like they're good actually, like that was that seemed to be the point.
Get really drunk and think about the person you hate the most. You'll discover something.
I don't get super drunk anymore. Hate, I can still do, though. I do still have that in my heart, for
That's
sure.
Good.
That's good. I mean, it's always somebody. But
we'll make you a full metalhead yet, Charlie.
Yeah. Right.
The finest, the sweetest meat is hatred.
Is that what?
I think that's from Blazebirth Hall.
Oh, okay, right on.
Oh no, I actually just made that up.
Did you?
It's from the Blazebirth Hall lyric generator.
Is that a fake? No, that's really
no. It's we've got some questions from chat, some simple ones.
Yeah. Let's do some. Let's answer some of these.
Let's see. Someone wants us to talk about Portal. Let's bookmark that. Someone is wondering best Celtic Frost album or Mortician. Death Metal Guy is the best Mortician, the first one.
Yeah, it's probably you get Hacked Up for Barbecue combined with Zombie Apocalypse, the following EP. Yeah. That's how you usually get that CD these days. That's the best album.
Best Celtic Frost album is obviously To Megatherion. It has kind of...
It's Morbid Tales. Come on.
Morbid Tales, I think, is more like weirdly halfway. Like, you get some of those songs on Hellhammer already. To Megatherion has some really good songs, man. Is Jewel Throne on Morbid Tales?
I can't remember.
Let's see.
Again, another combination. My favorite Celtic Frost album is Morbid Tales, Emperor's Return. So,
yeah. Celtic Frost. Let's see. Morbid Tales. Yeah, I think basically Morbid Tales. Let's see. Emperor's Return. Emperor's Return does have the ladies. No, it doesn't. Neither of them have Jewel Throne, which is my favorite Celtic Frost song. That's not a Hellhammer song. So, Jewel Throne. It's
it's where Dark Throne got their name.
Yeah, and like the early Frost stuff is somewhat held back by like it has this very dry production, but that's okay. You just have to really focus on the heaviness of the riffs. You know, I would love to hear some of the early Frost songs with like the unhinged production of Hellhammer, but that's fine. Right? It's so basically, yeah, we like the early stuff, the early Celtic Frost, and you know, obviously all Hellhammer.
He's Black Metal Guy is the giant Hellhammer enjoyer. That's another thing there. It's like, I think it's cool. I'll listen now and then, but it was never like a huge.
Yeah, that's my Mortician.
Yeah. No,
Hellhammer is another.
Jism is your Mortician.
Do you like Jism, Charlie?
I mean, they're like that Japanese like grind band, right, or whatever. Kind of.
It's very hard to put Western genre terms on it. They're a crust punk band basically, but like it really is kind of metal punk, Japanese metal punk, but they're also really into industrial music, early industrial music and stuff, and so there's a very elaborate melodic level of it, but it's also a lot extremely noise based. And has really crazy kind of stark English lyrics. I think you'd really like Jism.
I think I have not heard them. I thought that I had, but you're describing it. I don't think I have because that sounds quite interesting, actually.
It's right up your alley, I think.
Okay. Sick. What did these questions? I mean, people, you know, it was like Bookmark talking about Portal. There's been a lot.
I'm not sure we'd have that much to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of Portal talk on these streams.
I've tried it a bunch. Okay, yeah, it's noisy.
Doesn't really do it for you. Yeah,
it's noisy, but it's not like heavy. You know what
it's
I mean?
atmospheric.
It's textured.
It's enveloping. It's cavernous.
I think the first couple. Okay.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's like, yeah, I get it. It's noisy, and I've played Silent Hill 2 before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get it.
I think the early Portal records really do have something to offer. I mean, nothing had ever. Sometimes you do get things that are really new in really impressive ways, and the way those songs sounded like they were being played backwards. I mean, honestly, I would say some of the writing is kind of like Mortician, both in terms of like the arbitrary melodies and the sort of slippery hands.
I love Portal. I mean, to me, that sounds actually. That's some of the only, but that's some of the. There's only a few examples of music where I actually find it horrifying.
Right,
just as music, not even the imagery. Yeah, you know, it's like actually sounds like it's like outside, like real like outsideness. You know,
the sense of harmony in Portal is very unique.
One of the things that I didn't know that when I had Colin Marston on, he was talking with the Portal guys about some like riffs or whatever, that like how they write stuff, and he was saying there's some stuff where it'll be like one of the guys will be playing this really really complex, hard to play, worked out atonal technical riff that's ascending. And then the other guy will just do this sloppy sliding thing along the same thing. So it's like they just have this like hyper worked out shit, and then they just mar it with just with sloppiness, you know. And he was saying a lot of that is kind of what what you're getting.
Well,
Like that's the sort of
I think
spirit.
having two thoroughly independent guitar lines is the future. So that's
just increased
cool.
counterpoint. Yeah, I mean, just like Elliot
Yeah.
Carter shit, but for metal.
I will sort of branch off of here, not into Portal. Grave Upheaval is genius, though.
I don't know them. Yeah.
Oh, that's a side project by a couple of the Portal guys. That is way more up my alley, because that sort of like takes the promise of Portal and like strips out any sort of cool technical stuff. There probably is cool technical stuff, but you can't hear it. And it's just it's basically noise played with extreme metal instruments, but
it's
not in a
very
technical
slow
way.
war metal.
Yeah,
it's
really
very slow war metal. Yeah,
it's arch goat without riffs.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That was something I appreciated on listening to a little bit of your you describing stuff as not having riffs.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not something I would think to put it in such an extreme terms. But like, yeah, I can't remember whether you're talking about Impetuous Ritual or something in this cavernous thing. You were like, as for a band that doesn't have riffs, they ... I was like, damn, right. Some stuff it doesn't.
No, that can be
have riffs.
And on the other end of it, there's things in black metal particularly that are really organized around melody rather than a riff, right? A riff is written to loop 8 to 16 times. A melody, like, there's a melody, I would say it's obviously like it's a quantity becomes quality thing,
yes.
Right? Like a riff is more like a motif or something, but a melody that, sort of has some romantic organic quality to it and that unfolds across, like it's one thing that unfolds across 8 or 16 bars. And maybe you repeat it a couple times, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
But it has this fullness and scope that's more like classical music, or more like semi-improvised folk music, or, the really lyrical parts of a jazz solo that you just like, that's different from a riff. A band like Dawn writes melodies.
Okay.
One of the earliest to do that.
I could see this distinction. Yeah.
I can't believe I totally forgot about like one of the first things we pointed out as a huge potential in metal, which is the whole Axis of Advance hyperlinear melody thing. Yeah.
I was also going to say, related to that, another is Concrete Winds. Although Concrete Winds have sort of we're obsessed with the first Concrete Winds record, and they keep insistently not making more of the music we want them to make. But I think they listen to our reviews and decide to spite us.
Just holding out on you. No, those bands, I don't know. I thought Axis of Advance. Are you talking about Thanafaxeth? Yeah, Luke is my boy. Those guys are fucking sick. You were talking about. I thought Axis of Advance was like some like ignorant war metal stuff.
No,
it's linear. I'm getting them mixed up with something else.
It's aristocratic war metal. It's
okay, all right. But
Axis of Advance is like, that's another short list of like the best metal bands.
Complex linear stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, it might be the most sophisticated band that's ever been in extreme metal.
There's like a handful of bands that to us sum up the aesthetic of the show, sort of like radical modernist extreme metal, and they are Axis of Advance. It's definitely a war metal band, but in a completely different tradition from the sort of sex goat stuff. And it's
goat penis,
the goat stuff. Actually, goat penis sounds more like Axis of Advance than they sound like Black Witchery or something.
Okay.
But they have these amazing fully developed melodies often, that then just fully developed melodies in a context that's surrounded by a ton of carefully written grinding nonsense. And it's very elaborate song structures. As the death metal guy says, somewhat linear. There's parts that just will never repeat, or there's minimal repetition. It's very adventurous writing, and it sounds it's basically like Warhammer 40K music. It's sort of which is the ideal of black metal. It's the extreme metal ideal. It's the sort of resurgence of primordial warrior values in the future.
Yeah.
And You would really like it, man.
That sounds amazing. No, that sounds sick. That's probably the most most intriguing sounding stuff you brought up. The
Death metal guy, you have a few words about like more the technique aspect of it that would probably interest him.
Oh, of Axis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing with Axis is that so it's the sequel band to Sacramental Demolishment.
Okay.
So there's an immediate connection to Revenge, actually, which is
that's
kind of
why I thought they were. Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
it was an overlap with Revenge. Yeah, that's why I thought
Revenge is the degenerate version of Axis of Advance.
Yes.
Because I like Revenge, but I think of them as like knuckle dragger shit. I mean,
exactly.
It's like ignorant, you know. Yeah.
No, Axis of Advance is like
it's some of the Axis guys deciding to basically like fuck around and get a paycheck.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Conqueror wasn't getting them money. I mean, that was
shockingly.
That wasn't get them the hot topic.
Anyway, Death Metal guy, go.
So the big thing with Axis of Advance is that it is war metal that is informed by sort of technically adept epic melodic death metal stuff. You can see an immediate proximity to stuff like Dawn. You can see, I mean, probably in fits and starts, you can see a proximity to stuff like Dissection, although with all
Dawn, Sacramentum, Dissection, the Swedish Black Death.
Okay, that kind of melodic.
But with all the Metallica bled out of those bands,
Okay.
you know, sort of all the.
I can't exactly picture what you, but okay, yeah.
All the sort of heavy metal has been extracted from it, leaving you something that is very much like death metal and black metal and classical music all at the same time, but very unlike Iron Maiden or Thrash.
This was something you were talking about also in one of your in one of your shows. You were talking about taking the heavy metal, like what when black metal or death metal leave heavy metal behind. It kind of made me think about like in hardcore, when it's like at what point, like in New York hardcore, people stop saying hardcore punk and they start just calling it hardcore. You know, Madball, maybe they listen to the Ramones, maybe they don't. They don't have to listen to the Ramones to make Madball.
Yeah, like, Integrity or Hatebreed are not like punk bands.
Yeah. You know, so it's hardcore. You know, so and that was interesting to me. I hadn't really thought about, you know, which extreme metal bands had heavy metal still in them and which did not. Obviously, bands like Portal and, you know, like
they don't.
Portal doesn't.
That's very clearly stripped away. But I mean, like, but you're also saying, and this makes sense to me, that even just second wave Scandinavian stuff already kind of, I mean, Burzum doesn't really, Philosopheme does not have like Merciful Fate shit in it.
I think second wave black metal is where a decided hostility to heavy metal norms becomes like constitutive for a genre, but you can still make all sorts of links, right? Like there's a sort of grandeur to it. There's, you know, Emperor has their indulgent moments, blah blah blah. But yeah, basically black metal itself is pretty anti-heavy metal. And the Swedish stuff, the Swedish Black Death, which honestly I really like. I honestly listen to that more than most than Norwegian stuff. But the Swedish bands have a more vital connection to heavy metal. Yeah. But Dissection really wears that on its sleeve. Dissection really is like Metallica, and it has some of the things that are kind of gay about Metallica too. Some of the indulgence. Something like Dawn is maybe not very heavy metal, but it comes out. It's more. Dawn and Axis of Advance both take an interest in glorious, fully elaborated melody from heavy metal and a sense of scope. Heavy metal's classical aspirations. That's in all of these things. And they're not like, you know, Dawn has a cleanness to it that's different from a lot of the Norwegian bands. But so Axis of Advance is drawing, there's this process of like, we're interested in this about heavy metal, but not this or this or this. And Axis of Advance is like the culmination of that process where you get an interest in technique and scope and melody without a lot of the more sort of long hair self-indulgence.
Okay. Yeah.
It's,
just like it. Okay. This is, I can see. And what about?
And there's a timbral harshness to Axis of Advance that is very different from the raw harshness of punk-based stuff or hardcore-based stuff, but it's not very heavy metal.
Yeah. What about when death metal takes heavy metal out of the equation? Because you're talking, I mean, black metal, I can hear it.
Oh yeah.
Death metal, I tend to think of that as just retaining more heavy metal inherently. Does it leave it behind though?
Yeah, in places it does. You know, I think that it's not going to be an equivalent to how black metal did it. Death metal sort of left it behind naturally just by playing music that was so far from heavy metal priors that it just sort of left it as a matter of course. I don't think there was ever a strident rejection of it per se. That being said, one thing that has happened that is different from black metal is that brutal death styles and like slam styles have really split off from the parent death metal genre in such a way that you can find people who are listening to New Standard Elite type stuff who do not care about like Morbid Angel or Cannibal Corpse at all.
Okay. Is New Standard Elite, that's like brutal, that's like contemporary.
Oh, that's a label. Yeah,
that's like contemporary brutal
that
death metal.
Extremely technical. It mostly stuff descended from like do you know Brodican?
No.
Okay, so they were Kentucky or Tennessee? They're a Tennessee-based brutal death metal band who both really like, who played blasting, extremely brutal, extremely lo-fi death metal that was all about medieval torture. Right. And sort of accidentally created a sound that is now the sound that the label New Standard Elite is based around, which is highly technical, highly blast-oriented, super fucked up, hyper distorted timbres, like verging on kind of like noise stuff sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
So nowadays there is a population of brutal death metal fans who have almost no connection to the parent genre anymore. Guys that only listen to like NSE brutal death or slam death, that kind of thing. So like I said, so sort of the same process occurred, but it's not a direct mirror of what happened in black metal. Where black metal, there was like an ideological consideration. Death metal, there was just like a genre drift.
Gotcha.
Intuitive.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, Mortician is a good example of something that is very old in death metal, but is really not heavy metal. Like, if you play Mortician, for a good test, right, is like, if you play it for fundamental members of a genre, would they recognize it, right?
Yeah.
If you play Mortician for Bruce Dickinson would hate it more than the Sex Pistols.
But he would, I'm sure he would hate a lot of shit. I mean, wouldn't he hate Morbid Angel too? Or no, maybe
he wouldn't look down on it as much.
Yeah,
he might hate it, but he wouldn't look down on it.
He would say, "Yeah, I'm not into this, but they're really good at their instruments."
Right? He would see that they're descended from him.
He would at least recognize that it's the same kind of thing he does.
Right.
I mean, our version of this for black metal is like the Euronymous test, right?
Okay.
There's a certain kind of very pure black metal that passes the Euronymous test, and there's all sorts of other really good black metal that doesn't remotely.
I mean, would Euronymous, would he fuck with Ride for Revenge? I mean, is that like, I don't know.
Yeah. Euronymous
he would
because he's front row at the RFR show.
Because RFR is Celtic Frost and Beharit.
Yeah.
Okay.
He would love it.
I'm seeing Beharit in the fall. I got tickets.
Oh, nice.
The Beharit encounter. Yes.
Yeah. Beharit is fucking very sick. Oh, this is John Lamberton asked about thoughts on NSE. He's talking about New Standard Elites. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
And Nikhil. He was asked about Nikhil.
Right on. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Let's see.
Yeah.
NSE and Nikhil. Yeah, we were talking about him earlier on the show. I've gotten to meet Nikhil a couple times in real life when he was down in my neck of the woods playing shows, and he is. I can tell you, he's not faking anything on the recordings. It was even more impressive to see live than it is to listen to on the records, and he is an extraordinarily kind and intelligent and humble young man. And he's also extremely tall, kind of weirdly tall. I didn't expect that. He's like 6'2". Yeah.
Oh,
right. He's my large adult son, and I'll defend him with my life.
Nice.
So.
That rules.
The death metal guy has been a big specifically Nikhil booster for years. So.
Yeah, since he was fucking 14 posting Brodekin drum covers on YouTube. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
All right.
The kid's a fucking animal.
You're really like, you're not just talking the talk when it comes to the brutal. You're like cultivating the next generation of the brutal.
No. Try. Yeah.
Well, Nikhil, one thing I will say about the brutal death scene is that it's a shockingly supportive place. And one of the cool things is Nikhil, I mean, he started posting drum cover videos when he was like 13, 14. And immediately the guys from those bands found him. And what I thought was really cool was they treated him like a peer immediately.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, he's mostly playing with guys in their 40s and 50s a lot of the time, but you never get the sense that there's any sort of novelty to it or that his relative age is a matter of importance. He is always just supported by everyone as a player.
If you can play, you can play. That's it.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. 100%. Well, damn. I mean, we could keep going. I think I try to keep these under 3 hours at this.
That's fair. I do need to eat dinner at one point.
I'm thinking I would love to keep going. I could just keep going, but let's best fucked up deicide style lead playing. I should scope. No, there's too many directions. There's so many possibilities. Right. Okay. Anything that we haven't, anything from the comments people are asking that we have not gotten to, or that the boys have not gotten to.
Okay.
Maybe write them in the comments if you have it. I don't know.
Real quick before we leave, Black Metal Guy, you have 1 minute to sell Charlie on Spite Extreme Wing and why they're the most important thing in the world.
Okay. Spite Extreme Wing is the greatest black metal band of all time that sort of harkens a future beyond black metal. It is the self-overcoming of black metal. It is what liturgy claimed to be doing long before liturgy, and far more faithful and internal to the tradition. Okay. It's solar metal, basically. It's a shift from the sort of nocturnal and lunar tropes of the Norwegians. It's to a sort of violent Apolline aesthetic, cruel clarity of form.
I mean, solar, the sun is way more fascist than the moon. I mean, that's way more, if you want to really,
Spite Extreme Wing Band is the most fascist band of all time in the specifically Italian tradition. And they are steeped in the entire intellectual ferment that produced that, which a lot of kids will start a black metal band and be like, I want to be like cartoon Hitler, right? Like, because that's our culture's Satan, right? So there's a lot of NSBM stuff that misses the point. This is focused on, like, the cover of their record Ultra was done by an anarchist, right? Mm-hmm. Or like is a painting that was painted by an Italian anarchist in the 19-teens or whatever.
Yeah.
All the things that were the sort of the right and the left and the sort of futurism and traditionalism that were feeding into Italian fascism at the time, especially through the
like D'Annunzio,
Gabriel D'Annunzio specifically. Their record Non Ducor Duco is their tribute to D'Annunzio's Fiume experiment. Yeah. I'm wearing their shirt. This has the dagger of the Arditi, and they are. It's a the full. It's very economical in how it's written, so it has the minimalism that we value in hardcore. They're really influenced by the Misfits.
Sounds great. This sounds.
You would love it. Yeah. There's a soaring sense of classical melody like that you'd have in a band like Dawn, but it's all stripped down, much more economical. And every one of their records is perfect and sounds totally different.
Okay. And the blast beats are so fast, they make me shit my pants.
Okay. The blast beats are faster than fast. It's some of the fastest, like, not like in terms of literal mathematical time, but in terms of the feeling of flying like a falcon, man.
Yeah, it's great velocity, man. Great.
So
okay.
They're up there. So Spite Extreme Wing #1, Axis of Advance #2. This is true forward thinking originary extreme metal.
This is great. This is great. Well, I appreciate, of course, I appreciate all these, the recommendations and stuff, but thanks a ton for coming on here, fellas.
Oh, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. We should talk more in the future. This has been really
good. We'll have you on Terminus, man.
Oh yeah, I'd love to come on Terminus, please. Yeah, anytime, anytime. I'll talk your ear off about free jazz and everything that's not metal.
Oh, that would be cool.
I could take you on a medieval music. You want to go? I'm sure you know some early music already, but I could.
I know some. I have a bit of academic background on it and my own listening, but very, really patchy. I would love to talk about that.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. We talk about Cold, the beauty of the inhuman or whatever.
Fuck yeah.
Or just
the
eternal, the above, the vertical living.
Yeah. Vertical living, baby. Yeah.
It's my real estate company.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Awesome. Thanks, death metal guy. Thanks, black metal guy. I know your real names now, but I'm not going to dox you or whatever.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you. Yeah. Let me know about Terminus sometime, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Definitely.
Peace, Charlie. It's been awesome.
Peace.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.